Maybe we can maybe we can finish ahead of time, too.
Right?
Oh, that'd be great.
I know. It's going by.
When I first started summertime meetings, I bet were 8:30, 9 o'clock all the time.
Really? Nice.
And back when when we did that town government study.
You're on. Good evening, Littleton, and welcome to the Select Board meeting for Monday, August 10th, 2020. We're going to begin this evening with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Selectman DeCoste will not be participating in this evening's meeting, and Selectman Glavy is participating by remote Zoom meeting. So we'll begin by reading tonight's agenda. We're going to start off with the reading of the mail. From there, we're going to go to department board updates. We have a fire department ambulance lease proposal, the Department of Public Works approval of town common tree purchase, the Department of Public Works Long Lake Road neighborhood construction contract. We have a sewer working group update tonight with the Littleton Electric Light Water Department. We also have a joint meeting with the Light and Water Commissioners for a discussion on House Bill 4866 and House Bill 4865. The Littleton Light and Water Department, we have a 2020 Massworks grant application to review and vote on. The Historical Society has a CPC grant application for restoration of the fountain at the depot they'd like to discuss with the board. We have a letter to the MMA opposing its support of House Bill 4860. That's actually a discussion about that subject. And we're going to have a continued discussion on operational considerations for reopening town offices to the public. At 7:10, we're going to have public input and members' updates. At 7:15, we're going to have select board appointments. For the Director of Veteran Services, an appointment of various boards and committees, appointments of select board representatives to the Master Plan Implementation Committee, the Littleton Station Area Committee, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and we're going to interview teams for human resource, and we're going to select interview teams for Human Resources Manager and the Assistant Finance Director and Treasurer positions. At 7:30, we're going to discuss real property request forms submitted for the purchase of town-owned land, specifically Manchester Drive, parcels U14-1010 and U14-1020, and Shaker Lane, parcel U14-110. At 7:45, we're going to talk about special town meeting. We're going to discuss article topics proposed by the Select Board. At 8 o'clock, the Select Board's going to review their goals. At 9 p.m., the town administrator hiring process will be discussed. At 9:15, there'll be a discussion on the appointment of interim town administrator. At 9:20, the town administrator will provide updates, or the interim town or acting town administrator is going to provide updates regarding the Harvest Club. There's a side letter agreement. The use of Littleton Common, the Select Board had recently created a permit application for the use of Littleton Common. We're going to discuss enforcement of that permit. Retention of town council for the building department audit, Mass Department of Agricultural Resources monitoring report, approval signature for the 2020 inspection reporting. The Department of Elder and Human Services received a gift from the John and Eunice Morrison Charitable Foundation in the amount of $2,500. We're going to vote to accept that gift. Then will be followed by the use of Littleton Common for the commemoration of 74th India's independence. We're going to review a request for the Select Board representative to attend and change in formal time of the ceremony, a proposed proclamation and guidance on the location of the temporary flagpole and town safety guidelines. Then there will be a vote to sign the Commonwealth of Massachusetts state primary warrant, followed by a vote to sign Deputy Chief and Deputy Chief Patterson's contracts. The board will actually review those contracts and discuss those at that time. And that will be followed by minutes at 9:40 p.m. and then the meeting will adjourn. So we will begin with a reading of the mail. Mr. Layden?
Madam Chair, we have two correspondents for the packet for the board tonight. One is from Jeremy regarding potential use or interest in leasing part of town building at 37 and 41 Shattuck Street for the Canon, the nonprofit community theater. And then the second correspondence is regarding program update for FiOS Verizon service to the town.
Excellent, thank you. Do you know if anybody responded to the Canon Theater request?
I am aware that Nina Nazarian had responded to Mr. McMahon regarding looking at the space. I don't recall the specifics exactly of what was referred back to Mr. McMahon.
Okay. It's unfortunate that they lost. The Canon Theater is looking for space. It'd be wonderful if we could find something to accommodate them. Okay, so we are on now to agenda item number 2, department and board updates. We have a proposal for an ambulance lease proposal from the fire department, and I understand that Chief Wodzinski is on the call. And Cheryl's on the call as well. Has she been elevated? Yep, excellent. Good evening, Chief. How are you?
Good, thanks. Yourself?
Good, thank you.
Sure, we'll probably start off on slide 4. What I'm going to do, I believe everybody received in their packet from the presentation, the request. Just kind of going down a few facts of the ambulance service. We operate 2 ambulances. We have a 2012 and a 2013. When those vehicles were purchased, we were doing about 680 medicals a year. Right now, we're doing almost double that. We're doing just about 1,200 medicals a year. As the numbers change and our service increases, the wear and tear on those vehicles just continues to build. So what we're requesting here today is to go for a 3rd ambulance, and basically using some of the revenues that are collected through our paramedic program. As you can see on the screen right now, in the FY19, we brought in an average of $44,000 a month, about $529,000 for the year. In the FY20, we were well established, and our paramedic service was in full swing. We brought in on the average of just over $61,000 a month for the year's total of $739,000. So as you can see, the 2 years, they go up, and as you look from month to month, the revenues vary. And typically in the summer, revenues could tend to drop a little bit, and as people are away and not necessarily paying their bills. And then same around the holidays is what typically the billing company has made us aware of. And same as we track. Next slide. And as we show our projections, we put 3 models together. We wanted to show a low, a medium, and a high. So say it was like our very first year, that was a bit on the low side on our entry level. One of the things that we're seeing right now, basically the low model would be kind of a catastrophic failure of the insurance industry, not paying bills, and really it would put us to a point where we would be able to pay our offset for our budget, which is $650,000, and we may not necessarily be able to make our ambulance payment. So on that, obviously we would fall short on the lease payment for that. But like I said, that's kind of a catastrophic failure and a significant issue. If we go to the middle slide, our median projection we are able to make our $650,000 offset at the end of it. At the end of the year, we have roughly $135,000 left in there. On that, the town would have to pay zero. The town wouldn't have to come back and pay any more on our offset or on the ambulance. And we have a bit left over. We're looking at roughly $54,000 payment for after our $100,000 down for the ambulance for the following 3 years. So if you go to the next slide, on the high side of this, say we had another phenomenal year like we did last year, we would not only make our $650,000, would make our ambulance payment, but on top of that, we would have additional funds left in that account that we could potentially, down the road, have funding in there to purchase ALS equipment for replacement, or even potentially have money to put down for a new ambulance, as we'd be able to get into a 5-year rotation. And ultimately having 3 ambulances, your oldest ambulance would be 15 years old on this rotation. So the lifespan would be 15, we'd rotate them out, or that's the goal. Obviously with the run volume increasing and the wear and tear on the vehicles, the time frame on that is kind of decreasing. So we're doing our best that we can on maintaining all of that. And if we go to the next slide, this kind of just graphs out each of those, the high, medium, and low, as to where they fall. On the last slide, this shows the leasing options that we currently have. For the 4-year total of it would be $213,998. Payoffs after, say, we put our $100,000 down, we'd have a potential payment after the first year of $151,000. There are no prepayment penalties, so we'll be able to either pay it off after the first year, we could pay it off after the second, or even after the third. And you can see each of those payments. It is a state bid vehicle. Like I said, there were no prepayment penalties, and this also included a low lift system for the stretcher, so some random equipment along with that. One of the other options that we are actually talking about today, in speaking with Cheryl, not only is the leasing an option, but actually, is it handing it out, Cheryl, and actually borrowing the money and for even a lower rate, and having the ability to still pay it back like a lease over that 4 years, but again, saving some significant funding on that. You might want to speak a little more to that, Cheryl?
Yeah, thank you, Chief. So, like the Chief mentioned, another option besides looking at leasing would be for the town to effectively do the same type of program. Our borrowing rates are extremely low. So if we did some short-term bans over the 3 or 4 years that we would be making the payments on the ambulance, Steve ran some numbers today, and it would probably save about $8,000 to $10,000. So that's another option to consider. Like I said, it works exactly the same way as the lease, and the ambulance fund would still make the payments as the Chief indicated, but we'd save some funding. The other positive thing with that is that it gives us a little bit more flexibility. So with the bans, we can just pay interest for the first 3 years. So if, like the Chief mentioned, they end up in a year where they have a downturn, we can just pay the interest on the ban. And then we can let his fund build back up to pay off additional funds at a later date. Whereas a lease, you're locked into the payments that they pay.
Okay, great. Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Chief. Chief, just one question. So what would the run volume have to be to meet the low projection forecast?
It honestly, it's really hard to say. When COVID hit, April and May, we really slowed down. There was no traffic on the highway. Our accidents we didn't have any accidents for over a month. That's very rare for us. Since then, we have picked up our pace even more so than prior. We're at the same level that we were last year. The volume has definitely increased. Things are, as far as we're concerned, they're back to normal. And we've made up what we lost at that time. So now we're just, right now we are feeling the effects in our billing of April and May. And probably one more month similar to that. And then come September, we should start to see those revenues increase as we come back into that normal cycle when our run volume picked up. So it's really hard to say how many runs or emergencies we'd respond to, as much as you would say, you're comparing it to the different payers, the different insurance companies or the private billing. Accidents are a large generator of revenues for us, since it's paid by the auto insurance. So, having a month downturn on that, we're feeling those effects right now.
Okay.
Chief, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
With the third ambulance, we'd have to fit out that new ambulance with all new equipment?
The equipment we would have 2 ambulances outfitted as ALS units. The third one, the oldest one, would be set up as a BLS truck. It's a basic life support truck. So we would actually take the equipment that's off of our existing vehicles and move it over to that vehicle. So as far as purchasing that type of equipment, we wouldn't need to do that.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, it seems like we're not really talking about whether or not to pay. We're talking about when we're going to pay, because it sounds like these ambulances are going to be run into the ground sooner or later, right? So what we're really saying is, do we want to take advantage of this $200,000 now, or are we going to wait and find out that we need to do expensive maintenance on one of the ambulances, or, right? I mean, I'm in favor of doing it, of course, but I'm curious if you have any sense, like how long could we, deciding if we decide not to do this, how long could we possibly, keep these things running?
Well, so for example, one of our ambulances is out of service right now. Last year we had ambulances out of service for just over 2 months worth of time. In that time frame, we had 66 mutual aid calls, mutual aid ambulances that came in and potentially took that revenue, for another town. So the third ambulance, it's really kind of that backup. These ambulances, like I said, they have doubled their run volume per year since we originally purchased them. They are run all the time, and I mean, it's our goal to keep 2 vehicles in working shape, to service the community and have the ability to bring that revenue in for ourselves.
Do you anticipate that if we had 3, that there would be no downtime, or it would be very unlikely that there'd be 2 ambulances out at once?
2 ambulances are out at once, very common. That happens all the time.
I'm sorry, I mean out of service at once.
If there were, we would have that backup.
Okay.
That's the goal, is so that we'll always have one in service.
Okay.
Probably once or twice a year, we'll have it when they're both out of service at the same time for a very short time. But we try to get something back in service as quickly as we can.
Okay. Thanks.
To service the community.
Okay, great. Mr. Glavy, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I think it makes sense. I appreciate the foresight and taking advantage of the opportunities that the present situation will allow. And, given what you said about the past year's downtime for one of the ambulances, I think we could reasonably only expect that to be more if we held on a little longer, and I'm in support.
Okay, great. So Cheryl did provide an alternative funding source other than the lease, maybe a short-term borrowing. Does the board have any thoughts or feelings on that possibility?
If we can save money, I'm all for it. I mean,
I will defer to the giant brains in the finance department in this case.
that's the best way of putting it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know as well as they do. Sure, go for it. Save us 10 grand, Cheryl.
I reserve the right to disagree at some point in the future, but not today.
Okay, great, because we do have a motion, but based on, I agree, I think Cheryl's recommendation or suggestion is a good one. If it saves us some money, I think it makes sense to do it that way. So do we have a revised or?
Don't have a revise, I can quickly do it. I guess the one question, Madam Chair, would be really for Cheryl as far as, I believe tomorrow night is Finance Committee meeting, whether or not there's anything needs to be run by them.
True, right.
And then we found out from town council that the lease does need to come to special town meeting for approval. So under either scenario, it would require some form of special town meeting. Is it something that we should get all our ducks in a row for our next meeting to then finalize the vote or proceed? So
Joe, I'm just looking at the language here, isn't it broad enough to encompass, as is, what Cheryl's proposing here?
It says authorize us to enter into necessary contracts and agreements.
Yeah, that's pretty broad.
Okay,
yeah,
all right,
Okay.
All right. You want me to make that motion, Madam Chair?
please.
Then I'll move that the board vote to authorize the town administrator to enter into the necessary contracts and agreements subject to the appropriation and review by town council.
And I second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? It's a roll call vote. Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye. So the motion is approved as written. Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you very much.
Okay, great. So we are on now to item number 2B, approval of town common tree purchase. So I know that there's some members on the call that will speak to this. Good members from the Shade Tree Committee, possibly. Steve?
I thought Chris might have been on, no?
Yeah, I don't know
On for you.
if Steve's on.
There he is.
Okay. So I can give you a little history while Joe's bringing people into the meeting. As you may recall, the select board did vote and town meeting approved to provide some funding for the Shade Tree Committee. They were one of the groups that the board appoints that didn't have any funding. So last year we did propose funding for this group. I think it was $5,000 and it was approved by town meeting. They went back and met with Steve and the Shade Tree Committee came up with a plan for replacement of some of the trees on the common. Some of them there's Chris, required replacement just due to some sort of infection or something. So they came up with a really good proposal. I know that the Shade Tree voted and approved this, and now they're bringing it back to the select board to review. And I see that Chris is on the call.
Yeah, can everybody hear me?
We can.
Yeah, so basically what we're trying to do, so as you know, your board voted a few months ago now, probably for the tree removal plan, and we've gone through that. The 2020 trees have all been removed, the stumps have been removed. So now we're kind of into the next phase where we would like to plant trees in the coming months. I guess my request would be that the board would authorize the highway department to spend that money that the Shade Tree Committee has to do the plantings that the Shade Tree Committee has voted on. It makes it a little cleaner and simpler for us to be able to order the trees now, pay for them, and then once the conditions warrant us to be able to go and plant them, then we can do that. That way we don't have to keep coming back to the board and asking to spend a little bit more money. We're just trying to make it as simple as possible.
Okay. That makes sense to me. Does the board have any questions or comments?
Not I.
Seems like the right use of Shade Tree Committee money, in my opinion.
It seems, yeah, it's excellent. And the right process too, like you
Absolutely.
said, Chris, not to have to keep coming back. Mr. Glavy, do you have any questions or comments?
You're muted. Nope. Nope. We didn't hear you, Paul.
Oh, I'm sorry, that would be a no.
Okay, perfect. All right, good. Excellent. So if there's no further questions or comments, I believe that we do have a motion.
Yes, Andy and Liz. Move that the board vote to authorize the purchase and installation of 8 trees at the Littleton Common in the amount of $4,000 per the Littleton Common tree replacement plan dated June 15, 2020.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye, so the motion is approved as written. Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you.
And so now we are on to item number 2C, the Long Lake Neighborhood Reconstruction Contract. I don't know.
Yeah, so this is, I think this section of road, or these combination of roads have been asked to be paved now since I've started, so 3+ years and many years before that. So we're at that point now. We've had the engineering design completed. We put it out to bid. We had 9 construction companies come back to bid on it. Sunshine Paving is the lowest bidder at $510,000. I personally worked with them, and we also went through the process and checked their references as well. So my recommendation would be is the board could vote to approve their contract, so that way we can issue them a notice to proceed with the intention of them starting construction right after Labor Day with a completion date before December 1st.
Okay.
Hey, Chris,
Yes.
any explanation why there'd be such a huge difference between the bids that we have had come in? Because they're way below, and then it goes all the way up to 600 and what, 90?
900,000.
Yeah.
So Sunshine, yes, I actually did ask them this. From what I understand, they don't have a huge amount of work, and they were under the impression that a couple of the contractors who are very competitive bidders were going to be bidding on this project, so they bid a relatively competitive number. McKay Construction, which is the one that came in at $988,000. I've never even heard of them before, so my gut feeling is this was a, hey, let's throw a number at it. If we get it, we make a ton of money kind of attitude. We typically do see a fairly large spread. This was more than I would have assumed. But I think that $510,000, in my opinion, there's some money to be made there, so I don't think this is an undercut and then we're gonna get soft with change orders kind of situation. I've looked at the plans, the plans are really well done, so I don't expect there to be any issues out there. We did a lot of due diligence ahead of time to make sure we didn't run into any problems. So I mean, I'm comfortable at that 510. I initially, when I estimated this myself, I was closer to 510, a lot closer to 510 than I was to 988.
Thanks.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions or
Nope.
comments? Mr. Glavy, do you have any questions or comments?
No?
Okay. Great.
Like a motion?
Yes, please.
Okay. Move that the board vote to authorize the town administrator to sign the contract with Sunshine Paving Corporation for Long Lake Neighborhood Reconstruction Project.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye, and so the motion is approved as written. Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we are on to item, this is the Littleton Electric Light Water Department sewer.
Is it the sewer working group update
Sewer
next?
working group update, yep.
Okay, I can speak briefly to that. Madam Chair, at our our last meeting of the sewer working group, which I took the liberty of inviting Joe Layden to participate in. Nina had been doing that periodically, and as we get closer to town meeting, I think it's important that we have a lot more direct interaction. So my suggestion to the committee, and if this board doesn't mind, is that we have this on the agenda at each of our meetings from now to town meeting for any substantive update. As far as what we discussed last week and where things stand, I'd ask either Joe to speak to that, or we can just blend that into the light water department's discussion. I'm sure Nick can summarize it better than either of us. You can probably just blend that right into the Massworks grant application discussion.
Okay. All right, that's fine with me. Okay, so now that brings us on to the discussion of the Massworks grant application. So I don't know if Nick is on the call?
Yes, he is.
Okay, great.
You want me to take that, Paul?
Please.
Please. Yeah. Yeah, just to follow up back what Paul was talking about, the sewer working group has been meeting quite regularly. We've been working through the CDM needs assessment that we signed probably back in March. Does that sound right, Paul? Yes. On the needs assessment, we're through about 4 of the 6 parts of that scope. We've looked at the town holistically. A big part of the goal was to sewer the common, but we wanted to make sure that as we make plans moving forward, that we look at the town holistically, both from a treatment plant, siting and technologies, but also as areas of the town that needed to be sewered. That leads us to the next part where we're talking about trying to get a Massworks grant. We've had very preliminary talks with CM Park at the point, which I think Paul and the select board have had talks with them before, so this isn't really anything new. But, we think, from an environmental standpoint, it's a very important part of the town to get sewered. It's very close to well 2, Beaverbrook wells. So it's very important for us to connect them to the town sewer, both environmentally and from an economic standpoint. We think if we get CM Park's support on connecting the point to our sewer system, then there's probably a very good chance we can get a Massworks grant for bringing sewer down Russell Street, paving Russell Street, and also replacing the water main. So that's the Massworks grant that we're going to try to get. We tried last year, but we didn't really have the point tied in, so we didn't get the grant.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. So how much longer do you think you have, Nick, to finish up the other, you said 4 of the 6 parts have been completed?
Yeah, with the parts that are left are kind of the heavy lifting parts, financial pieces of it, both what it's gonna cost, the people that connect, but also cost to build the infrastructure. So, it's gonna be right after the town meeting that we're working on this. We're gonna start work, we've already started working with LCTV. We're gonna start doing, I think we have 4 or 5 episodes planned.
Okay.
We're gonna release information to the public that we already have, that's coming in now. And we're hoping that the financial piece is kind of figured out by mid to end of September.
Okay,
But it's a tight schedule, it's one that we knew was gonna be tight. But, we feel pretty confident by the come fall town meeting, we'll have answers for the public in an article to bring forward that makes most sense.
okay, great. Excellent, thank you very much. Any questions or comments from the board?
I have one. I'm aware of some wastewater treatment issues at the point currently, and I know Mass DEP is fining the point each day. At this point, I believe that's still going on. Is that going to be addressed prior to us agreeing to sewer the point, which I know Mr. Park has refused up to this point? No pun intended.
Yeah, in our meeting with them, that did not come up, and I don't even know if that's true, so. In prior meetings, we were well aware of DEP's, they're under an order anyway, but I think it was more of a friendly exchange between DEP and the Point Development Corporation. I was not aware of fines particularly, but I haven't discussed this subject with Sam and a few months, but they were under some pressure to get their, second phase of their own, treatment plant underway, and that's kind of dependent on the last phase of the building. I hate to speak for them because I'm a little shaky on that, those dynamics, but, I personally anyway was aware, and I think, whoever else was with me at the time we were meeting with him, and heard him talk openly about their ongoing dialogues with DEP. He would very much like to merge his property into our system, but there are some legitimate and significant logistical issues, not the least of which is the rates he's already got some of his, all his tenants signed in at, which, we may not match up with. There's the capital investments he's made, we may not be interested in that. There's a lot of moving parts there, but we're not unaware of their orders they're under from DEP.
So I've read documents. I mean, I wouldn't characterize finding someone $1,000 a day as a friendly agreement.
Well, as I stated, Matthew, I wasn't aware of any finding at the last time I had any conversation with them, but we have had them in DEP in the room at the same time, and they weren't adversarial. But
Okay.
Maybe that has changed. Maybe that's changed.
I mean, I also do wonder if that all of that stuff that's not being treated at the point is impacting our water supply. I mean, the
I
design.
don't believe anything's not being treated up there.
Well,
but I don't believe that's the case.
I don't believe that's the case. The design of their treatment plant, it should be twice as big as it is now because he's built out the vast majority of that complex, and he's only put in the first half of the water treatment plant. And I know that there are issues because some of the businesses there have been flooded by sewage and been driven out of business, and it has happened more than once, and it's happened to several of them. So I'm all for getting the point involved in the sewer. I think that is clearly going to be a huge source of it'll make the process bigger. It'll make the sewage plant bigger. It'll probably make it more efficient. But we need to make sure that we're getting a fair shake from him as far as what's going on with our water and our people who are in business here.
Yeah, well, I don't doubt the updates you have there, but those are updates to me. I would say this, the issues I pointed out a moment ago were really causes for Sam to be a little reluctant to partner up with us because he had already made investments and had commitments to meet with the state, which actually frankly allowed him to opt out of our proposed sewer program if he wanted to, but maybe the circumstances have changed for him enough that that's perhaps why he's reached out to Nick or looking to participate now. Maybe the math has changed on his side of the negotiation for reasons such as those you just cited.
Well, I'll be happy to share I have the documents. I'll be happy to share the information with you and the rest of the board.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. Are those recent,
And to Nick and the sewer committee obviously too.
right,
Right.
are those recently dated, Matthew?
I don't recall. End of last year some of them were in 2020.
Okay, all right, great. If you could circulate that would be helpful.
Take a note.
Okay. So now we're on, so any other questions on the sewer working group update? So now we're on to, we actually have a joint meeting with the Light and Water Commissioners to discuss House Bill 4866 and House Bill 4865. I believe the commissioners, 2 representatives are going to be on the call, on the meeting.
They are both on.
Okay, great.
Yes, they asked that I take the lead on this.
Sure.
Go on to answer any questions.
Sure.
This is more tied to, well, it's really, we had 2 homo petitions. They both made to the Senate last week. One of them is for the sewer commissioners. That one wasn't as critical as the one that was for PFAS. As everyone's aware, we have PFAS one of our wells that produces 52% of the water in the town of Littleton. We've been working closely with Rep. Arcero and Senator Eldridge on that home rule petition. It soared through the House without a problem, got to the Senate on July 23rd. And for whatever reason, it didn't go any further. So we were just urging the select board to support the water department, the water commissioners, in reminding everybody involved, senators and everyone in the House, that it's a very important article for the town. Without this, there's no solving our PFAS situation in Littleton. We need this home rule petition. Formal session is over, but they've extended it, so there's still a lot of things that might be able to happen to make this possible. But without this, we're kind of dead in the water. We need this to solve Littleton's needs and give them clean water, which everyone in this town deserves.
Right.
So on behalf of my commissioners, they asked that we draft a letter of support that's been given to you guys. We just ask that they support us in a separate.
Okay,
Madam Chair,
certainly.
not only do we already clear in our support, we put that in writing and sent the legislation along in its initial and amended forms. I spoke with Representative Arcero today, and I exchanged text with Senator Eldridge, and they both want to convey that there is no cause for alarm here. The bills made it through the House without issue right toward the end of what was expected to be the end of the session. They've only been over in the Senate for a week or so, and one of them is under review by Senate counsel, but that's not expected to be an issue. I believe, Nick, that Senator Eldridge is going to be speaking with you tomorrow at some point, tomorrow morning, is that right?
Yep, 10 o'clock, yep.
Right, and there was, both of them just encouraged me to pass along that they both ascertained that these bills can get through the House and the Senate, even with the extension, the rules, specific rules of the extension of the session. So that's not a concern. They are aware that we want them resolved before town meeting, because it does affect things that we are dealing with at our special town meeting. And as of last week, I didn't have this confirmed again today. Their expectations had probably had them dealt with by voice votes, if possible, in the next week or so.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't talked to the senator yet, so that's great to hear. This plan's ready to go. We're all ready to solve our PFAS problem. This is the last piece that needs to be done. So the sooner we get this done, the better. It would have been helpful that it was done, so by July 31st. It wasn't. That's fine. But like now, we need this now. We can't keep waiting.
Yeah, and I think that I think what we're asking here is that, based upon these conversations that happened with Nick and the senator, that we may still need the board to continue, the pressure in getting this done. And I hear what you're saying, Paul, and that's fine, but we've been waiting a long time, and we want to continue with the support from multiple boards in town who represent the residents of this town to continue on. So we'll hear what happens tomorrow, and hopefully we have a plan after tomorrow, but we still want to have the support of the select board if the movement's not happening.
Right, thank you. And if I may, just in response to Paul's comments, I don't see any harm in the board submitting a letter in support of this, showing our support for the House bills and as well as the water commissioners. I mean, it's certainly this is very important to the town. Paul, as far as,
Yeah, I'm obviously not opposed to that either. I mean, one of these topics is the reason I ran for this board 4 years ago, the sewers, I'm very supportive of the other topic as well. And I'm happy to sign on to another letter.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to, it won't hurt as long as it's worded properly.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you for that clarification, actually. Any other comments from the board? Mr. Knox, Mr. Nordhaus? Okay, good. So we can,
Madam Chair,
certainly,
I don't have a speaker on mine, so I had to come over to Ivan's computer.
okay,
And I agree from the other side of town, Jimmy. I agree, Paul. We have been more than supportive, the select board's been more supportive than on this project, but it's getting to a point now where the rubber hits the road, so I think another letter coming from the select board and water commission would be very helpful. Not only showing the support to all the residents, but also our legislators.
okay. All right, great. So we can, going forward, we can craft that letter and circulate it, and we'll get it signed. We want to get it sent out, hopefully, I would say sooner rather than later.
Happy to help with that over the next day or two.
Okay,
My sensitivity to this is as much because I'm a former state senate employee, so I used to be on the receiving end of those calls and letters, so I know what that's all about.
okay. So, back to Nick or Mr. Carr, what is the time frame that you'd like a letter from the board?
Well, I would say whatever you're comfortable with. We don't want to rush it, you know. It's more important to get the letter accurate and effective than it is to get something out immediately.
Okay, all right. All right, so we'll start working on that tomorrow, and we'll circulate drafts, and we'll get that finalized and submitted over to you for review, and we'll get it over to the senator's office.
Can I ask Nick a question?
Sure.
Nick, after your meeting with the Senate tomorrow, will you be informing our board of what the results were?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been trying to keep Cindy and both Joe up to speed. There's been a lot of correspondence back and forth, so absolutely, Joe.
Thank you.
I actually do have one quick one. I know that the bill says it's a change of use, and I remember from town meeting that you said it wasn't a change of use. So is that part of the delay? Is it a change of use? Like, you know?
No, it's not. This is a belt and suspenders type of thing. We're just trying to find the quickest way to solve the PFAS situation in this town.
Okay.
All right, great. Any other questions or comments?
Madam Chair, before we move on to the Massworks grant application, because it is dealing with PFAS, Nick, do you want to bring up the emergency funding through Mass Clean Waters Trust that Steve Venuti had exchanged through email today?
Yep. Yeah, thanks, Joe. I forgot all about that. Steve Venuti had sent an email earlier today. We need authorization from the board. We got a $900,000 grant, well, not a grant, a loan through the SRF program at 0%. It's for the temporary pipeline that we've already installed. $600,000 of that will be reimbursed to us immediately, and then $300,000 over the next couple of years as we utilize the pipe and then remove it. But you know, that's great news. Whenever we can get monies at 0%, we'll take them. So I think Joe has a motion.
Okay.
So I have it up for on the screen for the board under optional motion under D, so we're working group.
Okay.
Maybe a little small on the screen for people to read.
I can.
You want me to read that, Madam Chair?
Please.
Are we ready for that? Okay.
Yep.
Move to approve the $899,328 emergency funding to the PFAS pipeline project of the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust as part of the $6 million total project authorized by the October 2019 special town meeting Article 12.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye, so the motion is approved as written. And now we are on to the Massworks grant application. Is that correct, Joe?
Yes.
Okay. So we have, do you have any background information on this?
Last year, the board had voted to support a similar Massworks application along Russell Street. ELWD wants to submit a similar Massworks. However, this is going to expand a little bit more than what was done last year. In your packet was a map showing sort of the extent of the work. And because the Massworks grant is due on August 28th, and there's a lot of work that's involved with the Massworks, the idea was to come before the board to get approval to submit it, to allow for Nick and his staff to finalize that in advance of its application due date.
Okay. All right, great, thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
So I'm not 100% clear. So the existing grant was basically from 110 to, near Russell Street, and the extension would be all the way from that point up to the point. Is that accurate? The expansion?
This is a grant to install sewer main and water main and repave the road all along Russell Street.
Okay.
From King Street to Great Road.
Okay. So it's I'm sorry. So the original scope did not include sewer mains? Is that, or like what are we? I wasn't clear on what was. This is a grant for all new work, or this is a grant to expand scope of existing work?
No, well, this is a grant, it's to complete one piece of the already developed sewer district.
Okay.
It's not an expansion or change of anything, it's just trying to get the state to pay for a piece of it.
Got it.
Okay. All right, great. Any other questions? So I believe we have a motion.
Okay, and that would be, this is F, that's the one?
Correct.
Board vote to authorize the town administrator to sign the LELWD 2020 Massworks grant application for sewer and water main replacement on Russell Street.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye, so the motion is approved as written. And we are on to item number 2G. This is a letter to the MMA, and I can actually provide some background information on this, because I don't believe this is something, I'm not sure that all board members are aware of this. So it came to our attention that the MMA, the Massachusetts Municipal Association, had written a letter supporting House Bill 4860, regarding the system for training and certification of police officers. So regardless of the intent of the letter itself or what it's supporting or not supporting, what was concerning to me personally was that our board, as members of the MMA, were never asked our opinion on whether we felt this is something that we support, and whether, in turn, the Mass Municipal Association should support it. It's not like they didn't send out a survey to various communities asking for their feedback, or, do you support this, do you not support this? They just kind of arbitrarily went about this on their own accord. And I know that other communities have since written a letter specifically to the MMA, just saying, we understand that you wrote this letter, but it's not something that, we were not given any, asked for any input or allowed to give any feedback. And so really the intent of this is just to see if our board wanted to write a similar letter to the MMA, or if we had any thoughts on the topic itself.
From what I understand, part of what was said was that they had contacted all the members of the MMA. And that's what had me concerned, that Littleton hadn't been contacted, and then thank the town of Rutland for bringing this up, because that might have slid right by me. I wouldn't have known it. But just like you said, I am not in favor of having them just say, everyone has agreed to this letter. And the content isn't that alarming. That's not it. It's just the idea that they would just blanket say, you know, all the towns have already looked at this and approved it. So
Right.
I would definitely want to send something to the MMA that we won't support this type of action.
Right.
I agree 100%. I actually think the letter's well-written, and I agree with virtually every point in it, but if we can make sure that our response is aimed specifically at the process and not the content of the letter, I'm in favor of it.
Okay. Mr. Glavy?
Yeah, my response is actually pretty similar to Matthew's. I know that what's gonna come out at the end of the tunnel in terms of final legislation and regarding reform in law enforcement may look nothing like the legislation that was originally proposed, and so I'm not gonna get too excited about the details, but I don't like what MMA has purported to do. I get it in the big picture that they send a lot of letters in the legislature backing MMA positions, and we don't see all of those. But this was kind of a high-profile topic, and their language specifically suggests that they did run it by people, and that's wrong.
Okay. All right, great. So I know that we did have a letter from one other community that we were looking at, so maybe we'll use that as a format, and we'll draft something and circulate it back with the board.
Sounds good to me.
All right, good. And I realize I just skipped over a matter, the Historical Society, the CPC grant application for restoration of the fountain at the depot.
What letter is that?
H.
Oh, it was.
No, sorry, G.
G.
You said H, but yeah.
Yeah, so I skipped over, I went to H, but it's actually G.
Where's the fountain at the depot?
It's in front of it's now the bike shop. It's called the old depot, right by the wood stove shop.
Right?
It's an antique fountain that's been
Okay.
there. You used to, when I was a kid, it ran constantly.
It ran
And the
constantly,
horses
yeah.
would come up and use a trough. It's a beautiful piece of,
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
driven past that 1,000 times, and I don't think I've ever seen
From
it.
the bottom, too.
that's right.
Right. So do we have anybody from the
Yes, we have Carolyn Mueller. I just asked LCTV to elevate her to a panelist or allow to speak.
Okay, great. Carolyn, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Good evening.
Hi.
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 So you want to walk us through this grant application for the restoration of the fountain at the depot?
Sure, so what we need from you is permission actually to do the work, the restoration work, and subsequently, of course, to ask permission to submit an application to the community preservation for funds to do so. The fountain was donated to the town by the Grange in 1912, so it is owned by the town. And a couple of years ago, we got a request for some information on the fountains that were made by the Concord Foundry Companies by a gentleman from Warren, New Hampshire. And they had a similar fountain that they were looking to do some restoration. And they also put together a program and a booklet on all of these fountains. And within the report was a condition assessment. And, Larry Sullivan was the gentleman, and he said, this was his own assessment. It wasn't a professional assessment by any means, but it certainly highlighted the fact that our fountain was in kind of bad shape. And it's one of those things, you see it all the time, but you don't really look at it. So when we went and looked, there was a lot of rust. The door on the bottom that hides the pumping mechanism is gone. And we spoke to David Erickson, of course, of the shop right across the street. He had done some similar work on cast iron hitching posts for Ann Lawrence, who's one of our board members. And he immediately, this just kind of captivated him, and he wanted to do the work. So he's, in the letter that I sent to the selectmen, we did have something wrong. There was a light stanchion at the top. We have an old photo of it. And he has a piece very similar. So he put that back on and put a light. So he donated his time for that. But what we would like to do, and this is, I know, Joe, one of your clean up the depot area, so this would kind of be, you know, a bullet point that we could probably cross off the list. You know, the depot is really kind of a special area. It's fairly untouched, and, you know, the house, 2 doors down after the, post office is being renovated, which is wonderful to see. And, we would just like to continue, you know, in that direction, and, just ask your permission to do that.
Great.
Personally, I think it's wonderful. There it is, there. It's, just like you said, it seems like things in that area have been neglected over and over, and I want to thank Brad Miller for doing work across the street, too, in that little park that has been brought back, too, so that looks nice down there, too.
Yeah, so David Erickson has already put some urns with some flowers that, the garden club usually plants the trough. So he still needed some urns, and, Brad Miller is going to make a donation to the garden club, so they have some funds to put plants in the urns. So, yeah, it's kind of a, you know, a real community effort, and we're hoping to maybe, you know, continue that.
Thank you, Carol.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments from the board? So I believe do we have a motion on this?
No, I was just looking, it looks like, we don't have a motion on the slide for this.
Okay,
Do we need one?
I think we can do it on the fly.
Okay.
I like that attitude.
do you want to take a stab at it, Paul?
Oh, I thought we were, I thought you meant do or whatever.
No.
Well, I'll make a motion that the Board of Selectmen, support the CBC grant application for excavation of the town at the depot. Will that work?
Perfect.
That was good.
I
Good to
second.
me. Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye. Perfect, great. Thank you very much, Carolyn.
All right, thank you, we'll run with it.
Okay, so we are on to now item 2I, a continued discussion on the operational considerations for reopening town offices to the public. And I believe, Mr. Layden, do you have a presentation for the board on this?
Yes, and should be able to go through this fairly quickly as well. For the board, you know, this has been a topic of conversation for the last number of meetings. Just last week on August 3rd, we welcomed back all the employees here in Town Hall and have been working with people to finalize barriers, PPE, signage. You know, once you get everyone back in, you sort of find some little adjustments that need to be made. So last week as well as this week, we're continuing to do that. We're also looking ahead at opening the building to the public. We are open to the public, it's just appointment only. We've had a good number of people, not a lot, but we've had people that have visited building or town clerk's office, and you know, they call from outside or from their car and take care of their business. But wanted to follow up on that conversation from the last meeting. At our last meeting, there was a question that was asked as far as what are some of our adjacent towns doing. So did reach out to them, for example, there are some that are open to the general public. Groton has one access point, allows them to monitor who's coming in and out. They said they haven't had any issues to date. Westford, they did open back middle of June. They had some issues. They closed back down. They opened back up. They're open about 4 hours a day during the week. You know, they're open for limited hours. Other adjacent towns, Boxborough remains closed to the public, same with Air. Acton Town Hall, while they have everyone back, they actually have a service window. So almost like a bank teller, you go to the window, they help you with either providing answers there or making arrangements for meetings. So just our direct neighbors, it's various plans as far as opening and accommodating the public. So in also looking at, sorry, sorry, as I get back to my presentation here. As we look as far as opening things up
Thank you for
for,
doing that, by the way. I think it was me who initiated that.
Yes, it was.
For you, but I hope you found value, and I find value
Yes.
in the result.
thanks for actually initiating that, Paul. So one of the things in just looking at the building and thinking more with staff and our fire chief is what are some of the challenges that we have? We do have a couple of challenges. Whoops, actually I have to go back. It missed a slide. There we go. So one of the challenges that we face is we have a central point of access. Our main entrance right out here is the only handicap accessible entrance. Also, regarding access, there's not an easy way to restrict access between the library, town offices, and the school administration. One of the challenges, if we try to relocate things to here 103, is that actually the ramp out here, and I was taking a look with the building commissioner today, we have two ADA issues. One, looks like the slope is actually a little steeper than what ADA allows, and second, there's a lip. You can only have a lip of a certain height for it to pass. And there's some settling where the asphalt meets a drain, that's a little higher than that. The second thing is that the capacity for this room is 6 people, and this room gets used by staff. If someone, say, EHS or Park and Rec needs to meet together and they don't want to go outside, they're in here. We do have some people meet the public down in this room, exchange material. And then also, this is the room that we have interviews for new hires. We already have some scheduled this coming week and then next week, and with some of the hires on the books. To use this for a predictable town hours is hard. We'd have to relocate those to other areas. And within town building, 307 on the 3rd floor, that's only a capacity of 4. So that sort of pushes it out for a lot of departments as well as interviews. And then we have the multi-purpose room, which is 17, which it's a little open for people that want to be able to have more of a closed discussion. Also, there's no direct observation, meaning that it's a very narrow area to put someone in a chair, plexiglass, and sort of to welcome people in. Hours, each department sets their own hours, and when you look at the department web pages, you have things like building is 7 a.m. to 3:30, assessing 8 to 4, except on Mondays when it's to 6, and Friday until noon. Treasurers has a similar office schedule, and planning and town administrator and select board are Monday to 4. I did want to make note that while there may be hours, if you go, well, add up those time, it's less than 8 hour day, or it's exactly 8 hours. A full day here for a 40-hour week position is 8 hours and 30 minutes for unpaid lunch. That's what a typical work day is. So how can we overcome some of these? One, we could specify public-only hours, reduce a time frame that then hits most of those departments, and I'm just throwing out an example, 9 to 3. Monday through Thursday, 9 to noon. Departments can continue to meet by appointment outside of those hours. So if someone wanted to come for 6 o'clock at night, right before treasurer collectors leaves, they could continue to do that. Or building earlier in the morning. One of the other things for short term is that, as the board identified, if you have anything more than really just a paying your bill in an envelope, that box out front really doesn't cut it. If you have a larger envelope, you can't fit it in, and the other option is basically putting it in a box. In looking at possible solutions, we could have a larger box replace the one that's there, for then larger packages to be dropped off. Again, utilize a greeter. We have some furloughed employees that we could have them come back and take on that capacity. If we were looking at creating a new greeter position, we would have to go to the personnel board to then have a job description and get that approved. And then also just make sure we work with the fire chief and building commissioner that if we did have someone outside of there as a meter and greeter, that we did maintain safe distances. Other long-term solutions, which this could be funded through the CARES Act, there's the possibility to create service counters for the land use town clerks upstairs. This would all have to be done prior to December 30th. That would also allow us to consolidate some of the high traffic offices to the second floor or keep them where there is. And actually in looking with, again, the building commissioner today, looking at that main entrance, because on the other side of the wall is library space that is used by the veterans agent, there might be the opportunity to actually cut in some sort of customer service window to do that. Again, that's not going to address in the next week or two, but it's things at least to keep on the back burner, and especially if we can get some of these quickly done before the end of the year with CARES Act funds, it would not only meet some of the needs that were called out in the space needs study, but then also address a specific concern. So in talking with fire chief today, as well as building commissioner, we have a couple options. One, we can allow public access to the building with no change in hours. So basically going back to pre-COVID as far as access to the building. The second option would be to allow public access to the building with limited hours. Those offices could still operate by appointment only, so that if someone, such as a contractor, wanted to come forward in the morning, drop off materials, they could still contact the building department as an example to do that. And then three, and this is with Chief on the Zoom call, another option is to delay public access to the buildings, mainly because we're starting to see some dial back of some of the state opening policies and actually backtracking of some restrictions. For example, outdoor gatherings is not, it used to be 100, now it's 50. There's some other things, that's really associated with restaurants, but at least in looking at some of the information and talking to the chief, that would represent a third option. We just brought back employees, see how things go. In all of these, one of the things is that, especially if board members or even the public has any issues, really would encourage people to contact our office, either emailing the select board or emailing myself or calling, so that we can better understand what the exact nature of issues would be, and to see if there's adjustments that can be made. Since we will always want to make sure that we are meeting the need of the public.
Right. Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
Currently, Joe, and I only went to the third floor to see Nina the other day, but going down to the third floor, I noticed that there's already things up there, so people have limited access to things, which is for safety, I understand. Is that the same throughout the second floor too?
Yes, correct. So there are markings on the floor identifying where 6-foot separation is. Just like if you go to the grocery store, there's boxed areas where the customer should be so they can stop and wait. We have all the plexiglass up. We have signs that indicate where to stop to wait. We have signs about wearing masks, washing hands, maintaining social distance. So we have all that in place. We also have a lot of hand sanitizer stations, not only freestanding, but then also attached to the walls. We have all the processes in place as far as cleaning schedules, cleaning logs. We have all the visitor log sheets that then have been not only distributed to staff, but then we also have them just hanging outside the main door here. The one thing that, compared to maybe some other facilities, that ends up being more of a challenge is just that coming into the building, you can get a good distance before coming across an employee. So we want to make sure that, and that's where the greeter concept is. if we were able to get someone to be able to welcome people in, make sure they fill out the form or to answer those questions, make sure they're wearing masks, to take care of some of that contact tracing, that would be a benefit. Otherwise, we're asking individual departments to make sure they gather some of that information. And then also to communicate if there is someone that maybe is not wearing a mask and they enter the building, having some process such as calling me to come down and help and see if we can assist the person, or see as far as providing masks. We have a lot of extra ones even within the town administrator and select board's office to provide them.
So with what you have right now, and not talking about the meet or greet, because that's another idea that just came up, you would be able to open up to the public even if it was limited hours.
Correct. And that's what's been relayed as far as the next steps with town hall staff as well. We had a recent all-staff Zoom meeting sort of laying that out, what it would look like. And again, it's through all this, we're evaluating. Does it work? Doesn't it? Can we make little changes? Or maybe do we have to pause things because something just isn't working? Just like when we had everything set up before employees came back, wasn't until you actually had more people that were like, now that we have people and they're using the space, you always get that feedback as far as things that can change, processes that can change, and we'd expect that.
Is the issue with the greeter that we don't have someone who is available to do it, or that they can't see that someone's in the building, or both?
The concern is that essentially someone can come through the building, up the stairwell, all the way through the hallway before going into individual offices without seeing anyone. So you could all of a sudden have someone go into the town clerk space because their counter is interior. Hence why we want to look for cares to see if we can bring it to the hallway. So that ends up being the concern, is that on staff side, that's now a new element that for the last couple of months, we've either been on an alternating schedule, or a lot of people have been back for a while. And we're introducing something, and that's the concern. How do we intercept someone that maybe isn't wearing a mask, and people that are coming back? It's one thing to go maybe to the grocery store or pharmacy for a limited amount of time. Here we're within the building for 8-9 hours a day. There's a little bit more concerns that get voiced from staff to the administration.
I apologize if I missed something on this, but I believe at the last meeting, I think it was Selectman Kofi brought it up, that perhaps we have the main entrance be room 103. We could very easily set somebody up at a distance in the rear, even rotate existing staff through that, just so whoever's coming in from the public does come in, sees a live person, can have a conversation with them from a distance, and either resolve their issue there or make an appointment to go up and see somebody upstairs. I mean, of the three options you put up there on the screen, I like the middle one better, but I just think this additional component to it is kind of commonsensical. Again, I'm sorry if I missed the reason why that couldn't be considered.
Yeah, just to just go over that quickly, one of the main things is that outside of the multi-purpose room, this is the only room that, like for interviews, we have interviews scheduled later on this week for DPW position. They can't fit in 307, and this is the only...
How come we couldn't fit in 307?
Because that's a capacity of 4 people. So by the time you have the interview team and then the person, you're in excess of that amount. And then also, if you want to shut the door, say another department wanted to come in, by having a greeter here, we have to then take this room offline between, say it was a 9 to 3 hour time frame. Later on, we're going to be appointing people for the hiring team for the HR manager. Same thing. There's 4 people just on the staff side, so 3 staff, 1 board member, 5th becomes the candidate. So that kicks us down here. So that's just one of the challenges as far as using 103. Realistically, if someone did come and they were handicapped, we can always quickly adjust to then take them down through the main entrance to help them come into the building, so that we didn't have to worry about the access issues as far as coming into 103 from the outside from an ADA standpoint. That's just, it just adds a little bit more of a difficulty.
Any other questions?
Amongst the priorities, and I recognize interviews and those other functions that need to happen, amongst the priorities ought to be the ability of residents to look to access the interior of the building, and that still seems like the safest, most logical place for them to do it.
I actually want to address that. I think you spoke to this last meeting, and I talked to a business person who had to deal and interact with the assessor's office and the planning department and the building inspector and the town clerk. And, they did some of it remotely, they did some of it in person, and they said to me like that it was the easiest it's ever been. I think that the remote access to people in some cases is easier than having to come in here. So I don't want to discount the ability for the town to run without people being present in the building, with the understanding that obviously there are some people who are required to be here and must interact with the public. So I want to put that out there. I also think that having public hours is probably the easiest thing to implement, and there's no reason we can't do what the government of Massachusetts is doing. We can try it for 2 weeks. If it's a problem, we can stop doing it very quickly and we can go to some other plan. I don't want anybody to get sick. I don't want anyone to feel unsafe coming to work. And I think there are some employees who honestly feel that way. I think we're going to have to grapple with the fact that school is not going to be in session 100% of the time. There are going to be employees with school-age kids who need childcare and have to work from home in order to address that. I think that's a serious thing that we're going to have to talk about, in the next month or so, and how we're going to deal with employees who can't make it in because of family obligations.
Right.
So I don't think there's any good simple solution to this.
Right.
No disagreements here, Matthew. We're gonna have to, a lot of it's gonna be trial and error on the fly.
Right. Exactly.
I would think maybe even we'd be limited to like 9 to 12 just to start it off. That would still leave a lot of time that this room could be used for interviews for the whole afternoon.
Can I,
That's true.
chime
Yeah,
in
that's
on
a good
couple
point.
words?
Oh, certainly.
Can
You there,
guys hear me?
Chief?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. So in some of the discussions, and especially with there are definitely some concerns with some of the employees, and as far as just everyone's well-being within the building, and really paying attention to what's going on in the state and the cases in our own community, kind of going up and down. Granted, our numbers are very low. Would it be, maybe be possible to continue in the fashion that we are, with everything, by appointment? If still they can go into 103, and if they have an appointment with, anybody within town hall, then they can move it around, but it's all by appointment. It keeps it safe that way, and, over the past several months, so many people have really gotten used to, paying online or, being able to drop things off, put their checks in the box. Granted, there are definitely some things that need a little bit more interaction, maybe with some of our contractors dropping off plans and whatnot, but that could continue, by appointment. That way we can at least, continue to really limit the that ability for people to roam around in town hall, since it's such a big building, and people could get from one end to the other and all through all 3 floors without anybody even realizing that they're in the building.
Right. I agree. So I do like the idea of the greeter. I think that, it's something we definitely need, for many reasons, and, I think the option for appointment only, but then also set hours, is not bad. Like Joe mentioned 9 to 3 or something like that. Because I think some people do need to come into the building, especially, if they have large plans or, something might be more involved. Not everybody has really, access to online. A lot of people, depending, a lot of people just aren't tech savvy, so they do need to come in. So I think we can find a balance, and like, Mr. Glavy said, if we try it for a couple weeks, it doesn't work, we dial it back and we just have to adjust, and it seems like adjustments have already had to have been made as more people come back to work, so, yeah.
As far as the greeter, I don't want to volunteer anybody for doing work, but webcams are really cheap. There's no reason we couldn't spend $40 on Amazon, put a webcam on that door, and have someone inside watching it on their monitor to see when someone comes in without a mask, or if someone comes in that we don't know about, for 3 hours a day. I'm not like suggesting that we have a personnel board meeting and hire someone to do that, but if that's part of the protocol, it could help.
Interesting.
Just suggesting it.
Okay. All right, good. Are there any more questions or comments?
Just becomes a question as far as at our last meetings, we sort of said, like, we're eyeing that August 17th date. If there's a little bit more refinement, if it's looking at, like Joe said, 9 to noon, things are open through here, the afternoons are by appointment. I can also find out with fire chief as far as within the building, there may be space in EHS that then has a similar capacity as here, because we do have to shut the door for interviews. We wouldn't want to use a space that then we have to then sort of not allow anyone to come through, because we'd like to be able to say, here's where you come, here's where what to expect, and have it uniform, even if it's for 2 weeks, just have it uniform.
Right.
I'd have to check with Ann to identify, like, can we move to another building another office that then has a capacity of 5 or more to conduct interviews. Right. Otherwise, this for an hour or two in an afternoon may then be offline, but again, maybe there's set hours we just schedule around.
So, but what about the hallway over here? I mean, couldn't the greeter sit there?
It becomes a question just as far as their PPE, and we can't really have a table like this. You have someone sitting here, table, we need to maintain a certain amount of access. The hallway, it looks like it's a good size, but you add in what is essentially 5 feet right here.
Right.
That's probably only about an 8.5
That's not enough
foot
space
wide.
for someone to sit there and.
Right. Otherwise, you're putting them in a chair. Maybe you can encapsulate them with plexiglass.
Maybe get
Well,
a
I'm just thinking,
sidebar.
so I'm just thinking like you go to Marshall's, right? And there's a greeter there, they
Yeah.
clean off the cart and you just go on your way. I'm just thinking of it from that perspective.
We're trying to think, because I mean, one of the benefits is that there's not a large amount, that the traffic is to land use and then town clerks and people paying their bills. A lot of people are used to doing it online, but just being out there while Ed and I were looking at the space, 4 people came up, drop off payments. Those may be people that are coming into the building. And how are we expecting someone to stand for that amount of time that we're open?
Right.
Or it's really more like that logistic.
Yeah, right.
And we've been also working, and I've been working with Ann as well as Park and Rec and EHS to try to identify, do we have existing people that maybe we could bring back that are furloughed. So we don't have like a greeter yet. So we're still looking for that. So.
Okay.
So it becomes a question as far as, you know, is it limited hours like you said? And then again, we could utilize this space, but only if we had a greeter or a volunteer to do it while then we got up and running. Do we delay it a week or two so that we know we have someone that can do that role, rather than just letting people enter in through that access and then walk?
Yeah, no, I think it can't be done until we have a greeter in place, until we have that established, whoever that person may be. I mean, that's my personal feeling. You can't have people just walking in, and it's a complicated building anyways to find your way around, so.
I always lost my
They-
first day of orientation around here, so.
So, I mean, the chance are they could, you know, the area that they could cover before they found their destination is just it's too risky in this situation. So I think until we have a greeter in place and have established that things really can't change as far as, you know, opening it up to the public outside of appointment only. That's just my personal.
And part of it was also, I think, the message that, or rather, let me back up. There may have been some confusion as far as what by appointment only meant. Appointment does mean you can come to the main entrance, you can let them in, take the form and all that stuff, and you can go into the building. Essentially, you're being escorted.
Okay,
So that people, if they have a large packet, they have materials that they need to look at, real estate agent needing to go to the assessors to review files, that is occurring now. And some people may think that just because it's locked that nothing can happen. We are letting people in, and that has been happening within departments. So we could probably do a better job publicizing that fact as well.
okay, all right.
Is there any space in LCTV you could use for meetings? They're not using their studio right now, are they?
I'd have to defer to our
Yeah,
LCTV
I'm
support
just-
staff.
I think there's a big room there. It's the little gym,
huge.
right?
Yeah, it's pretty big.
Just curious. Anyway, I agree with Cindy. I think let's be safe and not risky.
Okay. All right, does that give you enough
Um,
feedback, Joe, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'll do is, we're still working on trying to identify people that we can beat back for a greeter, and if it's something that then we can implement, you know, can engage the board prior to the next meeting on the 24th, or then we're setting that date to publicize at the next meeting.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments from the board on this?
Madam Chair?
Certainly.
Yeah, just a little confused on, okay, the implementation, they have an agreement, I guess, you know, with the comments they made, what I've heard. So what's happening on the 17th? Do we need to do anything, or are we just, one of these options is or is not going to go into place? But, I'm unclear what's happening on the 17th.
I don't think anything's gonna happen on the 17th unless we have a greeter in place.
Well, when the, can the greeter be nothing more than various offices sending one of their people down there for 3 hours, and then we get 5 days in a week, 3 hours a morning, instead of working upstairs, you're working downstairs for a few hours, 1 day a week? Does it need to be a new position?
And that's where one of the ideas that was floated, we have some employees that are furloughed, about bringing them back to do that function. We do have in Town Hall a couple of vacancies, so some departments are down in staff. You know, it's definitely something that can review with department heads at the department head meeting tomorrow, to see as far as what would work. Question ends up being just only because the 17th will be here before we know it. If the reopening for, say, a limited number of hours is contingent on then having someone to meet, to greet people and to make sure that they're entering the building safely, it can be approval, dependent on that role being filled. Whether it's by existing staff, whether it's bringing back some furloughed people, again, it's something that can provide the board with updates as far as how we're moving along on that. The original hope was maybe there would be some park and rec that employees that may be able to be utilized, but they're either heading back to college now or getting ready to finish up their programs and then going back to high school, which is still a little bit of a unknown. So we haven't had anyone identified yet.
Right. So how much trouble would it be if someone came, I don't know, and there was a note that said, okay, if your destination's the clerk's office, please call the clerk's office. Someone will come down and greet you and escort you to the clerk's office.
That's what happens now.
Yeah, okay. All right.
And again, we can clarify things a little bit better, but that's exactly what happens now. They call the
Okay.
building department, someone from building comes down to the door to let them in, and they head on upstairs.
Okay, all right. Okay. Any other questions, Paul?
No, I would, actually be in favor of empowering the acting administrator to take this discussion and do what he needs to do to get as much of this implemented as quickly as possible.
Okay,
And not have to wait till the next meeting to get some things done if solutions arise.
okay. Sounds good to me. Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay. All right, good. All set, Joe?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so now we are on to item number 3 on the agenda, public input. I don't know if we have anybody waiting to speak.
At this point, Madam Chairwoman, we do not have any hands raised.
Okay. All right, great, thank you. So that will go on to members' updates. Mr. Knox, do you have anything?
I have nothing tonight.
Okay, Mr. Nordhaus?
I do, actually. And Joe has a visual aid for me. Spent the Saturday running a shovel for the Eagle Scout project for Troop 20 in Littleton. We installed 4 planters, beautiful planters at Pine Tree Park, right next to the common room, and filled them with what appeared to be about 6,500 tons of stone and dirt, according to my back. Ben and his family and farmer Christine transplanted a bunch of seedlings on Sunday. The purpose of this is it's going to be a permanent garden for the residents to grow food and ornamentals and herbs. And part of Ben's Eagle project is to educate, to have classes, educational classes. And we've been working with the Housing Authority to get water, and they've been very generous with their space and time. And I want to give a shout out also. It's tough to find donations right now. Like a lot of businesses are hurting, and I want to shout out to Great Road Farm and Garden who donated the soil for this project. It's wonderful to have local businesses helping out, and it was a great deal of fun.
That's excellent, good for you.
Well,
I'm impressed.
good for him. He's a
Yeah, no, good for him.
go-getter.
That looks amazing.
It was.
I'm
They're,
really impressed.
They're beautiful, beautiful planters, and
Wow.
yeah.
That's excellent.
And the other one was on Saturday night, I went and attended the Black Lives Matter rally, which was sponsored by the Rotary Littleton Interact. It was lots and lots of high school students there, which was encouraging. I listened to them speak. I was impressed with their enthusiasm and their commitment, and also, honestly, one of them gave me a lesson on redlining and covenant restrictions, which I found to be comprehensive and very educational. And I urged them to get involved with town administration. I told them that if they wanted to make change, they needed to get involved. But it was nice to see young people out there being active and supporting causes that they believed in. So I applaud them.
That's excellent. Thank you. Mr. Glavy?
I don't have anything that can top Matthew.
Excellent. So my only update would be that we had talked about the leash law at our last meeting, and I did circle back with a group, actually members, residents who had been on the call that evening and provided some input with respect to the leash law. So I did circle back with them, and we had a Zoom meeting last week and went over the leash law and came up with some suggestions to improve it in areas that we felt might be a kind of a middle ground to solve some of the problems that have been presented with respect to dogs on leash, off leash and whatnot. So we're gonna circle back and tweak that, share it with Conservation Commission. Littleton Conservation Trust was involved in that as well, and then bring it back to the board for another look as well. And hopefully we can get some, an article on the warrant for the town meeting in October. Okay, so now we are up to item number 4, Select Board Appointments. If you can lead us off on this, Mr. Layden, that would be helpful.
So first, we have the appointment of Director of Veteran Services, John Borowski, and he is on the Zoom call.
Good evening.
Good evening, how are you?
Good, thank you. How are you guys doing?
Good. So, as you know, Mr. Brodsky has been our Veteran Service Officer for a few years now, and his term has expired, so he is seeking an reappointment from the board. So I don't know if you have anything you want to add, Mr. Brodsky?
Well, it'll be 10 years in October that I've been the Veterans Agent in town, so do what I can. Right now, I'm working mostly from home, but doing more time than I did doing in the office because of a lot of conference calls and everything else with the state and everything else.
That's wonderful.
Madam Chair, if you don't mind, I'll add to John's tenure. I've been around long enough to know that, when he took over, I don't think the level of activity serving veterans, those with needs, has been anywhere near as much as it is right now. It's grown over the years, both with aging older veterans, from the Vietnam era, and then new veterans that we have, welcomed into town from their service in the Middle East and elsewhere. And of course, the project that both of you worked on with the memorial. John's been a busy man over the past 10 years. Appreciate his work and service.
So thank you.
Absolutely.
And right now, I'm down to 9 clients, regular monthly clients right now. Was up to 16 at one point, but a lot of them moved out of town because they can't afford it there. Type of thing. It's that type of situation we're in. Plus other factors that they had to move to. But anyhow, I know that a lot of veterans in town. I don't know them all personally. I would love to contact them all, but I don't have all their contact information, so I can't. But if there are any veterans out there that have any questions, please give me a call. My phone number is on my, should be on my town website. I use my cell phone on everything, so no big thing. I do appointments by, to meet people anywhere, anytime.
Excellent. Thank you, John. Thank you for all you do in your continued service to our veterans in our community.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
No, we're just lucky to have them.
Yeah.
I see you once a year, well, twice a year at the Boy Scouts at the cemetery. Good job. Keep doing your good job. I'm sorry we missed you this year.
Yeah, it was a business. We went around and we got a couple guys go around on Memorial Day and actually do the ceremonies at each place.
Yeah.
It was done.
Okay.
Excellent.
Like a motion, Madam Chair?
Please.
Okay, move that the board vote to appoint John Borowski as Director of Veteran Services for a term expiring June 30th, 2023.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Can't go around and shake hands like we normally do.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we are on to item 4B. We have the first Park and Recreation Commission. We have an applicant.
Madam Chair, I'd probably at least ask for anyone that is currently on Zoom as an attendee to raise their hand that they are here for consideration of appointment, just so that we can then identify who they are to then bring in I'm not sure if Laura Evans is one or not.
She is one.
Okay, I
Yeah.
thought so. I'm trying to balance
Just going-
Zoom,
Yeah, no,
PowerPoint, and I
no
was about to
worries.
get my
I just
packet.
was going through the list, so she jumped out at me, her
Okay.
name, so.
And it does look like Judy with LCTV has brought them into the Zoom.
Okay, excellent. So, do you think everybody's in?
We have 2 people, and probably start with Laura Evans, and then the second we have a phone number, so we'll have to ask who they are.
Okay. All right, so we have, just get Lauren's application.
There it is.
Okay, great. Laura, is it Laura or Lauren? Is she on?
She is. She just got connected to audio, but she's still muted.
Hi, here I
Oh.
am. Sorry.
Hi, okay, it is Laura. Excellent. Good evening, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Good, thanks. So we have your application here. And I'm just seeing you applied for Green Lakes Committee, Council on Aging, EDC, and the Littleton Common Committee.
Yeah, I just wanted to explore some of my options and get involved in any way that I can.
Excellent. All right, great. So we do have, on the Clean Lakes Committee, we have Spectacle Pond, we have an alternate for Spectacle Pond, and then we have a citizen at large position, and then on the Littleton Common Committee, we have, one opening available. So I know, I don't know, Mr. Layton, if you can help me with this, on the Clean Lakes for Spectacle Pond, there's specific requirements for that, seat?
I don't recall off the top of my head. However, we do have Corey Godfrey had asked on behalf of the Clean Lakes Committee that we delay appointment until they have had a chance to meet with some of the people who are in for consideration.
Okay. All right, so,
When it was created in any event, I don't know if it's changed over time, the representatives for the various lakes were expected to be representatives for the various associations. All those lakes have associations, a Long Lake Association, Spectrum Pond Association, etc.
okay,
So, yeah.
all right, great. So Laura, I know that there's, I believe there's still openings on the Economic Development Committee as well as the Littleton Common Committee. Is that, Joe, do you know off the top of your head about the EDC? I know I'm putting you on the spot, I apologize.
Unfortunately, I don't know how many
Okay,
vacancies. I know we
All right.
appointed one. I thought there was one more.
okay,
Memory serves from the last time we did an appointment.
okay. All right, great. So Laura, why don't we start with this? Why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay,
And we'll-
yeah, so, my fiance and I are new to the Littleton area. We just moved in a few weeks ago.
Oh.
We're still in Massachusetts, so we didn't come from far, but we are looking to establish roots in the Littleton area. And I've always had an interest in sort of working on a local level, from my past when we lived in New York City, even though I'm a Mass native.
Excellent. All right, great. So do you have a preference over the Littleton Common Committee or the Economic Development Committee? Did you look into either
Yeah,
one of those, or?
More information on each. I mean, I live sort of in the Long Lake area, so it's not far from the common.
Okay,
But I mean, I'm open to definitely learning more about both.
okay. All right, great. So we could certainly, if you'd like, there's certainly an opening on the Littleton Common Committee if you wanted to be appointed to that this evening. And then we could circle back with respect to the Economic Development Committee if you wanted to just maybe attend a meeting, just to check it out and see if you still wanted to maybe participate in that group. But in the interim, we could certainly appoint you to the Littleton Common Committee this evening.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Love
Are there any questions or comments from the board?
None here.
No,
All right, great.
welcome aboard.
it. Thank you.
Thank you for,
I'll make a
all right, no, I
motion,
appreciate
Madam
it.
President. Yeah.
Please, Mr. Glavy.
Okay, yeah, I'll, move that the board vote to appoint Laura Evans to to the Littleton Common Committee for an indefinite term, is that what we say, John?
That's what it says.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
I,
And Cindy Napoli is aye. Congratulations, Laura. You just need to go get sworn in by the town clerk, please. You can just call her to make an appointment and she'll be able to swear you in for the Littleton Common Committee.
Okay, and is someone gonna follow up with me about some other items and things?
Yeah, there'll be some information that'll be sent out to you with respect to that committee specifically, and just some background information about, meetings and whatnot.
Okay, great, I'll make an appointment with the town clerk as soon as I can.
All right, great, thank you.
All right, and do you need me to stay on the call?
We do not.
Okay, thanks,
Great.
everybody.
Thank
Very nice to
you.
meet everyone.
Thank you.
You too.
Bye.
And who would be next, Mr.?
So the person with the phone number ending in 4630, if you could give us your name and address.
Yes, good evening. This is Saul Marini at 149 Hartwell.
Good evening, how are you?
And good evening, good. I was having some issues with my internet connection, so I had to switch over to the phone.
That's okay. So we see you have an application here, in which,
And I put in the application for the parking rec.
okay, perfect. All right, great. Okay, and so if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, so I've been in town for a while. I have two children that are 8 and 10 that participate in a lot of the park and rec activities. I've started getting involved with the Castle on the Trees rebuild, and have sort of continued to check in with Park and Rec and some of their things since then. And so I'm interested in helping them and supporting their activities and providing, activities for the town.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments for Solomon from the board?
I'll offer just one comment. Saul may not know me, but I remember him from when we were working on the Castle on the Trees project. I was one of those folks that had no skills and talents and showed up for a minimal amount of time to do my part. Saul was clearly one of the guys who knew what he was doing and actually helped construct the thing, and glad to see he's willing to get involved at a board level.
You always need someone to run a shovel, Paul.
Excellent, thank you. All right, good. Any other questions or comments before we have a motion?
Nope.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Paul.
Would you like a motion, Madam Chair?
Please.
Okay. I want to keep you in suspense, Ms. Marini. Let me just see what we're going to see. I will move that the board vote to appoint Solomon Marini to the Park and Recreation Commission for a term expiring May 8th, 2021.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye. Congratulations, Solomon. Thank you for coming forward and volunteering. If you could just please go to the town clerk. You can call her to schedule an appointment to get sworn in. That would be wonderful.
Yep, we'll get right on that.
All right, great. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so now,
Mr. Harvey, is Mr. Harvey on the line for the Permanent Municipal Building Committee?
oh, Bartlett.
Yeah. Don't see him?
I don't see him in the attendee.
Okay. And so Bartlett we don't have. Is Corinne on the phone, on the call?
No.
Okay. Is Megan on the call?
No.
I have two, Corinne. How about Edward?
We have Ed Mullen.
We have an Edward Collins?
No, we do not.
Okay, all right, we don't necessarily need someone to be
There's
here.
someone raising their hand with a 6-digit extension, so maybe one of those, so we can.
Okay, and we also had Lisa Winter was a applicant for the Clean Lakes, but, I guess that, those are on hold for now.
So
I'm present.
Is that Megan?
This is Corinne.
Oh, Corinne, hi, sorry. Okay, so we have, Corinne was for, good evening, how are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Good, thanks. So I see you've submitted an application for the Agricultural Commission, the Clean Lakes Committee, the Conservation Commission, and the Sustainability Committee.
Correct.
Okay, so it came to our attention just a little while ago that the Clean Lakes Committee has asked us to hold off on appointing anyone to that committee at this time. So, and I'm not sure that there are any openings on AgCom.
Okay.
And then we have, or the Conservation Commission, because I believe that ConsCom, we just recently made appointments on that. But I do know that there's openings on the Sustainability Committee, Corinne.
Great.
So thank you very much for coming forward and submitting an application. If you could, maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Sure. So my husband and I moved here last year from Billerica. And like Laura, we're excited to put down our roots, and I'm just excited to serve the community. And I don't know too much about the Sustainability Committee, but I'm happy to learn, and sustainability is something I'm passionate about, so I'd like to do whatever I can to help.
That's excellent. Thank you very much for stepping up and wanting to get involved in the community so soon after moving here. The Sustainability Committee is actually, I recently had a conversation with the current chair, Erin Healy of that committee, and I believe there actually might be a meeting this Thursday evening. So this is perfect timing. There's a lot of work, potential work to be done with the Sustainability Committee. So I'm really hoping to revitalize that committee. I know it's been kind of trying to find its way, to no fault to anybody, this past year. So it'll be great to have you on board, to get more involved with that committee. So, are there any other questions or comments from the board for Corinne?
Just thank you for getting involved. It's
Yeah,
great to
no,
see
it is
people showing up and becoming part of the process. It's very important.
It is.
Absolutely.
Any questions or comments, Mr. Glavy?
I'm just ready to make a motion whenever you're ready to have it.
Please.
Okay, I'll move the board vote to appoint Corinne Ganache to the Littleton Sustainability Committee for an indefinite term.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye. Corinne, congratulations. Thank you again very much. If you could just call the town clerk tomorrow and make arrangements to get sworn in. And then I'll circle back with you about that meeting on Thursday night.
Great.
All right, great.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, and who, lost my paperwork. Who do we have next, Joe?
We don't have anyone else present on Zoom, and Madam Chair, I just would then sort of ask procedural question as far as, like, we have for the Affordable Housing Trust, we have that application from Maureen.
Oh, right, Maureen Donnelly. So,
and then we did have the one for permanent PMBC for
Bartlett.
Bartlett.
Right.
Whether or not
Right.
how we proceed with those.
Okay, and so my other question too is gonna be for Megan. She had applied for the Sustainability Committee. Do we want to appoint somebody if we haven't heard from them, or how does the board want to handle that?
I don't know, is there any protocol for that?
Right,
It was once a time, then we didn't even talk to people if they
Yeah.
put the application in.
right.
I mean, I know Meg, like,
I know
I've
Meg,
talked to her on social media,
so
right?
if she wants to be on the Sustainability Committee, I would be, people should get involved.
We did
Right.
receive an application from her, and she's a known quantity.
Right, and if she wants to decline the appointment.
That's a
she's-
good point.
Yeah,
Well, if there was in my perspective, if there was a contest, a couple of candidates that were both seeking a vacancy, but that's not the case here.
okay. All right, so let's go forward then and appoint Megan. Paul, if we could have a motion?
Sure, and this is for the.
Sustainability, yeah.
And sustainability, okay, then I will make a motion that the board vote to appoint Megan Rank to the Littleton Sustainability Committee for an indefinite term.
Second,
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Yeah, aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye. Excellent. And so the next applicant would be Bartlett Harvey for the PMBC.
And is he the only applicant for that?
It appears so.
Well, then, obviously, we all know Bart, and if he's not present, I don't have a problem appointing him in his absence.
Okay.
Unless you have any other discussion from members, Madam Chair, I will move that the board vote to appoint Bartlett Harvey to the Permanent Municipal Building Committee for a term expiring June 30th, 2025.
second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye. Excellent. All right, good. So I'll follow up. We have a meeting with Bartlett tomorrow night, so I can talk to him then. And so as Mr. Layden had mentioned, we had an application. Well, I guess we'll get into those now, right, Joe? There was a few of those for,
There was Maureen Donnelly for the affordable.
Affordable Housing Trust. So Maureen has been serving on the Affordable Housing Trust since we created it. Her term on that, on the board has expired. I did speak with her today, and she wants to continue working on that board. So she had submitted, I just asked her to submit an application, but she's been wonderful, a great asset, providing a lot of insight to that board. So I would love to see her continue on that endeavor. If the board would like to reappoint her, that would be wonderful.
Happy to make a motion if there's no discussion. I'll move that the board vote to appoint Maureen Donnelly to the Affordable Housing Trust for a term expiring June 30th. What year, Joe?
It'd be 2022.
Okay,
Two-year term.
Thank you, for a term expiring June 30th, 2022.
second,
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye. Okay, excellent. And now we have, the next thing the board needs to do is we need to appoint representatives to particular committees. The first one that is on the list is the Master Plan Implementation Committee. We don't currently have an appointee to that committee. I'm personally interested in serving on that committee. I don't know if any other members of the board are or not.
I've done it, Chase has done it, I think the intent, and I think it serves the board well if it gets spread around over time with various members so that we all get refreshed in our, our understanding what the master plan is and where we're at in its implementation. So I'm fine with, personally, I'm fine with you, taking it. For time.
Any comments, Joe?
Fine with me.
fine with me.
All right, great. Thank you. Could I have a motion, Mr. Glavy?
Right. I will move that the board vote to appoint Cindy Napoli to the Master Plan Implementation Committee for a term expiring June 30th. Joe?
looking at the motion that's drafted,
Oh, here we go.
uh,
I don't know if that has.
I think it's indefinite.
Nope.
Or it's for 1 year if it's
I
the,
think 1 year was actually, I'm going to 1 year for,
1 year.
term expiring,
Yeah, don't do indefinite.
1 year of good behavior, expiring June 30th, 2021.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made in second. All those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
I,
I believe I need to abstain, right?
no,
Oh, okay,
you don't stand to gain from that material, believe me.
okay. Aye, okay, great. So I am been appointed to the Master Plan Implementation Committee. The next committee is the Littleton Station Area Committee. Presently, Chuck and myself serve on that committee. I know that Chuck does want to continue on that. I do not.
I'm interested in being on that one,
Okay.
so.
What are we talking about now?
This is the Littleton Station.
Okay, sure, yeah.
I just figured through my involvement with the Affordable Housing Trust that I'll still be involved in that. But I know that Matthew wanted to have an opportunity to serve on that committee as well. So,
Fine with me.
okay. So,
Unless Mr. Knox is clamoring to get on board.
yep,
Is he? Is Mr. Knox clamoring to get on board?
No, I'm fine.
No, he's fine.
he's fine. You sure?
I will move that the board vote to appoint Chuck DeCoste and Matthew Nordhaus to serve on the Littleton Station. It was two members, is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. To the Littleton Station Area Committee for a term expiring June 30th, 2021. I'm like, oh, Joe, I'm gonna trump you and just say that's a 1-year appointment, is that right?
I was gonna say that.
Okay.
Okay, great. Motion's been made
Second.
and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Abstain?
Mr. Glavy?
All right.
And Cindy Napoli is aye. Okay, great. And so now, we did have the Affordable Housing Trust. My term is not up yet. And we just appointed Maureen Donnelly on that. And so we'll have to revisit that too, once we move forward with the town administrator. I don't know how you want to handle that.
Is there gonna be a vacant seat if there's no, if the town administrator isn't gonna sit there?
Yeah, so the town administrator can appoint, is either the person that serves on that board or can appoint someone to serve in their place.
So are we assuming that the interim has those powers?
Yeah, we are, actually.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't know, Joe, if, I know you're involved with, you're on Littleton Station, right?
Like you said in the reverse,
Yeah,
there's gonna be a lot of overlap.
right.
So, depending on what happens, as far as interim, sort of a weird
I know.
discussion.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Well,
You don't have the power to delegate in any event.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
We could circle back to this
Yeah.
once we talk about the interim position, right? And then.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, there is a vacancy on that.
And realistically, as far as if you want to say from a philosophical, I don't think that there would be really any issue with that being designated, especially because there would still continue to be a role.
Right. So, right, so what I guess I'm saying is, do you want to designate someone to serve on that in your
I think,
place?
yeah. That's,
okay,
in
that's
a
what
very
I'm-
roundabout way. That's what I was trying to say.
Okay, all right, good, yeah, excellent. So, I don't know if any other members of the board have any interest in serving on the Affordable Housing Trust?
I do, actually, because I think it would fit well with the housing authority stuff that I'm working on.
That's a good point.
So I would also be interested in that one.
Okay. Joe, do you have any interest?
I'm fine.
Okay, all right.
And so that wouldn't actually be a board appointee, right? That's Joe's designee?
Right, it would be Joe's designee.
So no motion?
Correct.
I don't get a motion?
You don't get a motion, you had a motion.
I know, but it was with Chuck. It's not my own motion.
Oh, we could have done them separately. Okay, so, All right, so Joe will appoint Matthew to the Affordable Housing Trust. And as you know, Matthew, you'll have to go get sworn in,
Okay.
and I'll have to get sworn in from Master Plan Implementation Committee. Okay, so next up we need a representative from the board to serve on the interview team for the HR manager position. Do you have any more information about that, Joe?
Yes. So on the interview team would be myself, Cheryl, as well as Ann Essman. Because under the bylaw, HR in general requires appointment by the town administrator with support of the select board. The idea was to see if there was a member of the select board that would be interested in sitting on those as well.
Okay, all right, great.
We're waiting for that designee to then schedule. We have all the resumes, everything's closed. We're literally just waiting to pick up the phone to call people.
Okay, all right, great. So I'm gonna kind of look over to my right. to
That's
Mr.
fine.
Knox.
I'll volunteer for that.
Okay, yeah, because you've served on the personnel board and whatnot. Is there any other comments?
I'm good.
Okay. Do you need a motion on that, Joe?
Yeah, we can move a motion for
Yep.
this.
Okay,
Move the board, vote to appoint Joe Knox, right, Joseph Knox?
Yeah.
yes,
What's that?
correct.
Yes, okay. Thought I recognized him. To the Human Resources Manager and/or Treasurer Assistant Finance Director interview team.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Glavy,
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
Mr. Knox?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye. Okay, excellent. And now we need a representative to serve on the interview team for the Treasurer Assistant Finance Director position.
My motion actually combined the two of them, I thought you were.
Oh, okay, excellent. Perfect.
So Joe gets his own
Whoa.
motion, right? He gets two of them.
Without even
see how
knowing
it
it. Without
goes.
even knowing it.
I see how it is. Fine.
Paul kind of,
That was sneaky,
Paul
Paul.
bundled them. He bundled them.
I'm happy to open up the position of clerk if Selectman Nordhaus would like to volunteer.
After tonight,
His
I
day
think
is coming.
I'm going to be plenty busy in the near future. Thank you, though.
Okay, so we're all set on both of those. Excellent. Okay, so now we are on to item number 5, the request for, we've had 2 proposals to submit to purchase town-owned land. We have Manchester Drive parcels U141010 and U141020, and Shaker Lane parcel U141110. I know we've received some very comprehensive applications from the abutters to these properties, which was very helpful. So I did receive a message regarding Conscom voted this evening. I guess they sent an email. They did not support selling the Manchester Drive parcels. Just for an FYI for the board. But we do have a proposal, because we do have a bylaw that speaks to this. I don't know, Joe, if you want to walk us through that, or if you want me to.
Sure, and in some ways, it's basically just laid out in also the motion.
Right.
Given that there's existing policy for the sale of town-owned property, where a land sale committee is established consisting of a town administrator or assistant town administrator, building commissioner, planning board, representative, town assessor, town treasurer, and a representative from Concom, Park and Rec, and Highway, and LELWD. And that they review the applications for purchase and or review parcels owned by the town for possible sale. So they'd have to recommend back to the select board their findings as it relates to the parcels that were not that the Conservation Commission did not vote to not be sold. So.
They did not vote.
No, that the Conservation Commission, this is from Amy Green, voted tonight to recommend that parcels U14-101 and 102 not be sold.
Is there
So
any?
there was another parcel, U14, 110 off of Shaker Lane, that it looks like at least the Conservation Commission's vote did not exclude or did not recommend against selling that.
Do they give reasons?
Yes, they do. Regarding the 101 and 102, as noted, they provide important wooded habitat buffer between Manchester Drive and the George and Lucy Yap Conservation Land fields. Since these fields are hayed, this wooded buffer is especially important refuge to wildlife during mowing, as well as providing edge habitat that is critical to birds and mammals. In general, the Conservation Commission would support keeping any town parcels adjacent to existing conservation land.
I recall that the applicant was interested in having this as, I don't think he would object necessarily to it being wooded. And if there was a restriction on it, I wonder if there's some way to compromise and allow him to purchase it, but leave it as a, I don't know if he could leave it wooded enough for Conservation Commission to be satisfied, if it needs to be pristine wooded, or if he could clear out underbrush and poison ivy so his kids could play on it. And that would be, enough of a buffer between the Yapland and Manchester Drive.
That's a good thought, because I appreciate someone who wants to go forward and do all the work that this gentleman did.
Yeah, he did a lot.
To try to enhance his own property, understand where the Conservation Commission is coming to. So, like you said, if there can be some kind of compromise there that a certain amount could be taken out and make more room for his children, then
Yeah.
I would be in favor of that.
I mean, and have a specific deed restriction on those plots that defines what can and can't be done with them. And I think cutting down trees would obviously be part of that restriction, but maybe there's more, I don't know. I'd really want to get more detail from Conscom on what constitutes enough of a buffer.
Right. Well, I mean, so we did receive a memo from Steve Venuti, and I think because of the size of the parcels, he's recommending that we follow the bylaw. And go through that process as opposed, because I know in the past we've had smaller parcels that we didn't really need to, go
So
through that.
my question is,
reconvene that committee.
is it up to us to start the process of the purchase of town-owned land with that committee? Or can we, if we say no right now, does it stop and we don't sell them? Or are we obligated to form that committee and go through the process if this gentleman has offered to purchase them?
Well, it was always my understanding that we had the right, as a Board of Selectmen, to say no, but I may be wrong. Maybe that committee.
No, I believe Joe's right on that. It's really we're
Okay.
not obligated to sell
Right.
anything. It's our option.
Okay.
Right.
And so this committee is essentially going to be providing you with recommendations. They're essentially going to do the research and look into things, and that may be one of the things that can be floated. Is there a mixture as far as if this was to go through, if there was a conservation restriction, a deed restriction on a portion of the property that maybe met conservation's goals? Ultimately, what would have to happen is that the board, after receiving their recommendation, would need to hold a public hearing.
Okay.
And solicit input as far as even from a butters prior to then signing off and then having it go further. So.
I asked this last meeting, is there a member of the Conservation Commission on this, the Land Sale Commission? Because I think there wasn't.
A representative of the Conservation Commission.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
there is? Okay, good,
Yeah.
all right, okay.
That's perfect. Let them
Yeah,
go through.
let's go forward with that committee and decide whether or not we can reach some kind of agreement
Yeah.
on the land,
Yep,
with everybody being happy.
I agree.
Well, or semi-happy, right?
Are there any other discussion? We have a motion, Mr. Glavy?
Yeah, okay, and based on the discussion, the motion's gonna go through as written, with the understanding that we're hoping for some sort of, common ground agreement.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Move that the board vote in accordance with policy 18, sale of town-owned property policy and procedure, to establish a land sale committee consisting of the town administrator and/or assistant town administrator, the building commissioner, planning board representative, town assessor, town treasurer, and a representative of the conservation commission, the park and recreation commission, the highway department, and the light and water department. The committee shall meet as necessary to review applications for purchase and/or review parcels owned by the town for possible sale to the public, and to recommend its findings to the board of selectmen.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye, and the motion is approved as written. Excellent. And now we are on to item number 6.
Do we solve the problem with the other parcel land?
I think it was for both of those parcels.
I think we formed the committee to look at everything.
Yeah, it's gonna look at
that's-
both
that's-
parcels.
That's listed there.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so, Mr. Layden, if you could lead us into this?
Sure, so, looking ahead as far as, what the next, month is gonna be, sorry, I'm just scooting my packet forward. Looking at our upcoming meetings, in preparation for a special town meeting, and especially because we're in the process of, crafting and listing out articles for, inclusion in the warrant. The calendar that we had, almost to that, there we go. The calendar that we had set up for the timeline had identified possible meeting for insertion of articles on the 17th. That would be next Monday as a special meeting. And also an opportunity to insert articles at the next regularly scheduled meeting on the 24th. And with the warrant closing noon on Thursday the 9th. It's recommended that we look at scheduling a possible meeting on September 8th. That would be a Tuesday following Labor Day. Reason being is that some of the articles for preparation for next Monday, we just won't have the language yet. We have the list of things that we're working on. We just added one tonight for the ambulance, but we're still working, and I've shared documents with various department heads as far as adding things on to make sure that we're all set. So it's just a question as far as whether or not we'll have things ready for the 17th. The 24th, definitely we'll have some, so we can start doing that, and that's why the proposed motion for the board is basically setting that special meeting on the 8th so that we can plan ahead and make sure we have everything together.
Okay. I like it. Any questions or comments from the board on that?
Nope.
Okay, that's a good idea.
So, want me to read the motion?
Please.
Okay. Move that the board vote to schedule a special meeting on Tuesday, September 8th, for insertion of articles, motions, recommendations on articles, hearings on zoning, and/or accept roads, if any.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye. The motion is approved as written. And now we are on to select board goals review. We did have what I thought was a very productive initial meeting. It was nice to get together and just be able to speak candidly about our goals and thoughts about different things happening here in town related to the board. So I did revise the matrix that I had put together for our initial meeting, and I didn't know if board members had a chance to review it, if they had any questions or comments.
Madam Chair?
Certainly.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent format and captured what we discussed. I'm enthused that we have what looks like, challenging but a realistic set of goals here. But given the fact that Selectman Coast is not here and we're already at 9 o'clock with some other important business here, I wonder if maybe a more substantive discussion of these can be either held at earlier on the agenda at our next meeting or on that night of the 8th when we've just established a new meeting.
Okay,
That's a suggestion.
sure. Any other thoughts from other board members?
But no, I think it's a good thought.
I agree. I think we should all be here for that because
Okay.
we're all gonna have inputs and, everything that happens is gonna depend on the other members of the board, so.
Right, okay, great, all right. Excellent suggestion, Mr. Glavy, and so we will continue that.
I just got us back on schedule, I hope you'll know.
You're so good, Paul. Actually, we're 5 minutes early now.
He's so good like that,
Let's just take a half-hour break.
right?
This was our chance though, to give Chuck a whole bunch of things at work.
We're dropping the ball on this. We've given him one. He's probably home watching.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, so the next agenda item is the town administrator hiring process. As was announced earlier this week, or actually it might have been last week, the board and Ms. Nazarian have mutually agreed to end her employment with the town of Littleton. Her last official day of employment with the town of Littleton will be August 15th. She's currently on vacation this week. So my thought was that we do have a bylaw for the hiring process of the town administrator. I'd like to get this process started sooner rather than later, so that's why I brought it before the board this evening. If we could vote to kind of reenact or revitalize the committee that needs to be brought forward for the town administrator hiring process. I'd like to do that this evening. And it does call for, we need to reach out to the finance committee, the school committee, and the personnel board so that they can each appoint a member to serve on this committee. And there also needs to be a member at large with municipal management experience, as well as a member of the select board who will serve as the chair on this committee. I was gonna ask the board, I would like to serve on this committee, and I don't know how other members of the board feel about that, but I just wanted to mention that.
That you want to serve, is that what you said? I don't have a problem with it. You are chair.
Okay.
I mean, I'm also very interested in this process, actually, and I would also like to be on that board, on the committee, I mean.
Okay. Do you have any comments, Mr. Glavy?
I'm happy if you're interested in serving to support you as the selectman appointee there, and to make the motions to activate the process. I'd say this based on the experience of the last go around on this. I couldn't agree more with getting this going earlier, and I hope we agree on a time frame that's a lot shorter than the last one turned out to be. I
Right.
don't think that ended up serving us as well as we had thought it did at the time.
Right, right, and so that is one of the reasons why I do want to serve on this committee, is just because of, having not being participated in the last process. I'd like to be hands-on with this, especially as being the chair of the board at this time. I'd like to serve in that position.
In assurances to Matt, just having gone through this in the past, I mean, certain aspects of the committee's work are done internal to the committee, but the board as a whole never really loses touch with it. I mean, I
Right.
assume Cindy, Joe, you'd agree that, it doesn't leave our hands and go away
Right.
completely.
Right,
Fair enough.
exactly.
Okay.
You'll certainly be involved, this board has to be involved in this.
Right, right.
If there's no other discussion, Madam Chair, I'm happy to make the motion.
Please.
Okay, I will move that the Board of Selectmen vote as follows, relevant to a 5-member town administrator selection committee as prescribed by the town bylaws, chapter 3, section 2. A, to invite the finance committee, school committee, and personnel board to each appoint one of its members to serve thereon. B, to invite applications for appointment of a member at large with municipal management experience. and C, to appoint Selectman Cindy as Selectman Chair, Cindy Napoli as Chair of the Talent Affairs Search Committee.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Are you sure?
I'm just,
Oh. Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
I wanted to get more reaction from you.
I'm like to, and Cindy Napoli is aye. Okay, thank you. Okay, and so now we were on to discussion regarding the interim town administrator appointment. As we know, presently, under our bylaw, Mr. Layden is serving as our acting town administrator. But I would like to begin the process of officially appointing him as our interim town administrator, which would include engaging in a renegotiation of his contract for him to serve in that capacity. So I wanted to bring that before the board this evening to see if we could get going on that process and get a, I don't know if we need a motion or what action we need.
So, just some clarifying questions for me. Is there a legal policy difference between interim and acting?
I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know, Paul, do you have any?
I don't know offhand, it's probably a good question for council.
Right.
You know, the other topic, which Joe's probably too polite to ask, is at some point it may be appropriate for us to discuss enhancing his compensation to reflect the increased duties.
Right, exactly, because he is a contract employee.
Okay.
So he's now presuming another role outside of the scope of his contract.
Okay.
So we would need to
Probably
rewrite.
should get a little guidance from council on this.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yep, so that's what we need to do, so I just wanted to bring it before. It's similar to what we did when Keith left with Mr. Ansaldi, so.
And just as far as acting versus interim, my understanding is that there is a distinction, mainly because acting is for short periods of time, when the official duties haven't been vacated, and there are certain statutory requirements that I don't believe the acting meets that, and that the appointment of an interim does then meet that statutory requirement. And there's workflows and financing and all those things and agreements that then need to be done as well. So
Okay.
if someone was traveling to Europe for a week, that's different.
I suppose my corollary is are there, if you're appointed interim, are there things that you can't do that a officially hired town administrator can?
No, I mean, one, the bylaw dictates the duties of the town administrator and what it can and can't do. So it basically still defers back to the bylaw. But as far as interim versus full town administrator, the duties would be exactly
Okay.
the same. That's where acting.
The
would be
bylaw
different.
recognizes those two things as the same position?
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
great, okay.
All right.
Yeah, I just didn't know what the process was from a legal point of view or a,
That's a good question.
yeah.
Are you comfortable with
Yes.
this move? How much more does that put in your, I guess I'm trying to say, do you need someone else to come in and help out? I mean, it's a lot.
So that's a really good question, and that's something that some of the department heads and I, we're going to be meeting tomorrow or Wednesday. I just have to check my calendar to identify exactly how we can take some of the tasks that not only say were within my position, but then others that have been vacated, and how to almost package things up so that we can either get consultant or a contract employee to take those on to alleviate some of the responsibilities. So where it is identified as, especially with the finance director, treasurer, assistant treasurer, and HR, as a concern to make sure that work continues. You know, we have special town meeting, but also we have a lot of hires that we need to go through, and we need to be able to stay on point with those. So, and that's something Cindy and I talked about, and I you know, after that meeting, that I'd bring her up to speed as far as all the things that we were able to identify. So it has been something that we have been looking at.
Yeah.
I'm satisfied. I just didn't want to, all of a sudden,
No.
you're here
it's-
for 6 months now. And all of a sudden,
Believe it or not, it's now 7.
Is it 7?
It's now 7. What a pandemic will do to the time frame, you know?
I'm just gonna
Honestly.
say, you're here 7 months and
Right, yeah, I know. So, no, it's a good question. But, so we'll circle back after that meeting. Thank you, Joe.
Do we need a vote, Joe?
I think that you do. I mean, mainly, especially if you need to check with a motion.
We're gonna go to, yeah. Circle back now with town council and, yeah, enter into contract negotiations.
Item 9 in my packet, so.
We
There
just
is no
have,
motion,
yeah, we just have discussion dependent.
right. Do you wanna wordsmith a,
I can do something as simple as this, I make a motion, the Board of Selectmen appoint, Joseph Layton as, which will we go, interim town administrator, until further notice.
Second? Is that it?
well, pending, because we've got to enter into contract
Yeah,
negotiations with
and
them.
to engage town council to
Enter into-
assist in necessary documents to enter into contract or
All right, let me rephrase the vote. I don't think we need to spell out that we have to talk to council, that's our prerogative. I would say that, all right, I'll make a motion that we appoint Joseph Layton to serve as interim town administrator, pending successful contract negotiation.
Perfect,
Second.
great. Motion made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye. Okay, great, and I will follow up on that. Perfect. Okay, and so now we are on to item number 10, Town Administrator. Mr. Layden?
Sure. So at one of our last meetings, we had approved the host community agreement with the Harvest Club. One of the items that we had discussed was there was the community benefit payment, trying to separate that out. So town council worked on this side letter agreement. Question ends up being as far as what is proposed in the packet, whether or not the board supports that language, whether or not we should wait to consider that until Select Board Member DeCoste is in attendance. You have the correspondence from Chris Heath, Town Council, on that agreement.
If there's
Sorry,
any,
you have the memorandum.
if there's any substantive discussion of this, I will recuse myself. If it's just a straight vote, I'll just abstain. But if you guys are gonna decide anything, I should leave.
Okay. I mean, I don't know, what do you think, Paul and Joe? Do you want to wait for Chuck to be here to talk about this, or it seems pretty straightforward to me?
Yeah, that's my read on it too. I mean, if I thought there were outstanding issues that Chuck would want to have something to say about, I'd say defer it, but I would, based on our prior discussions, would say that he probably is hoping that we will go ahead and approve.
Okay, great.
And this was a specific provision that originally was one bullet point within that HCA that we just carved out. So
Okay.
I don't think that there's really a lot of detail outside of what the board was really looking for.
Excellent. All right, great. So I have a motion.
Okay, I'll move the board vote to approve the memorandum of agreement with the Harvest Club LLC, which addresses the community benefit of $5,000 per year to be paid to the town of Littleton for the next 4 years.
second.
Motion been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Abstain?
And Cindy Napoli is aye. So the motion is approved as written. And now we are on to item number 10B, use of Littleton Common enforcement of permit. I had actually asked for this to be placed on the agenda, and I don't even know that we can do anything about this. I know that there was a gathering 2 weekends ago on Littleton Common by two different groups that didn't come forward and request a permit from the town of Littleton. And I don't know that we do have any recourse, or if there was any way that we would wanna say, go up to the organizers and say, hey, you really should have, you needed a permit to be here.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so there was, yeah, it was a Black Lives Matter rally, and then there was some Trump supporters there as well. And I don't think that they planned to be there at the same time. This was 2 Fridays ago.
Doesn't our application make a distinction between people who are just using the common to go out and stand on a corner or hold signs and people who are having a structured event with their speakers and such? Because I thought the one did not require a permit and the second did.
Right. So, I mean, I guess that's something that we need to talk about. I mean, do we want to make it, I don't know that we can even enforce it, or do we want to make it more structured? You know, it was just, that was a difficult situation from what I heard. I wasn't there at that situation, but I know, and it might be helpful to maybe bring the chief into this conversation, but I know it was people on the common, but it was also people over by the bookstore. There was kids running across the roadway, and it wasn't an organized event. It was just a group of people that had shown up. So I guess, you know, thinking out loud in that situation, maybe the police would come in. But I just don't know if it's anything that the board wants to even think about.
What you have written here for a formal, someone coming in that wants to use a comment, I appreciate this. I think it's well done, but I don't think you can really limit people who are gonna stand out in the common and hold a sign or something like that.
Right.
I mean, if it's just, then again, if it turns out to be 100 people, then it's different. But if
Right.
it's just someone there that's, 8 people showed up to be in different parts of the common holding a sign, I don't have a problem with that at all.
Right, okay.
But then again, how do you,
Right.
I mean, I guess when it becomes a public safety issue, then we need to rely on our
Right,
public
and I think,
safety.
that's what I was gonna say, I think common sense, that, you know, would dictate that the police have some policing powers just on that alone. The fact that the islands, you know, the grass islands at the common are surrounded entirely by public ways, that
Right,
if they're in any way creating a hazard, then they can be dispersed.
right, that's true.
I mean, I think that everyone said it. Does this permit process get us anything in the case of, you know, two disparate groups, you know, shaking their fists and yelling at each other in the common? Like, even if they had applied for a permit, what difference would that have made in terms of enforcement or reducing the chaos?
Right.
Apart from maybe saying, well, maybe Trump and Black Lives Matter shouldn't schedule things on the same day.
Well, I think what we could have done is said, no, someone's already using.
Well,
it's-
okay, that's fair, I
You know
guess,
what I
yeah.
mean?
that's right, and plus, this has to be reviewed by the police, so the police department would know about it.
Oh,
Right.
yeah,
Different
right.
As opposed to someone just showing up there and no one knew what was happening at all.
Yeah, and so the other thing that in leading into that, Joe, is I wanted to add to this, notifying local businesses of an event. I know that some of the business owners have asked that we do that. Just if someone does have a permit for an event on the common, just to give them some notification that there's gonna be a gathering there.
How much of an obligation we have to notify, to what extent, the immediate 10 businesses, 20, 50? I mean, maybe we can just make sure it's always publicized on the website, and they can, at their own leisure, check it out to see if there's any events coming up. Because, I mean, is it really
Right.
on us to go notifying individuals?
Right, well, I just kinda thought as a
I mean, I don't
courtesy.
mind having a public schedule that's easily accessible, so if somebody wants to say, gee, am I gonna have a traffic problem today, you know, check it out once a week or once a month.
Right, okay, it was just something
My
that,
opinion, I mean, I don't know.
yeah, well, it's something the business owners had asked for, a
Yeah.
couple of them, you know, in close proximity to the common, as a courtesy. So I just didn't know if that was something we wanted to add into the application or not.
I would land on the side of less bureaucracy. I do think we should talk to Chief Bernard and see if he has any concerns or comments on the process that could help him, like,
Right.
make sure people are safe. That
Right.
would be my primary concern.
I agree with that.
Okay. All right, good.
And you know, whatever permits we adopt, when the Rotary wants to have Santa Claus come in December, they're still gonna go ahead and do it without asking. They always do.
Excellent, it's true,
There's always a lighter side to everything.
right,
Trouble, I
right,
can tell you right now.
They never ask, and they always do it, and it's always fine.
very true. Okay, so now we're on to item 10C. This is the retention of town council for the building department audit. As the board has discussed, this would be, the purpose of this is to just follow up on some operational matters within the building department the board wanted to look at, and we were going to utilize town council for that purpose. So we do have a motion here. There's,
Okay, no further discussion, I'm happy to read it.
okay,
Move that the board appoint town council to conduct an audit of the building department records and documents for the years 2017, 2018, and 2019 for the purpose of submitting a report to the board regarding inspectional services and interactions with users of those services.
Second?
all those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye. The motion is approved as written. And now I'm going to defer back to you, Mr. Layden, for 10D. Kind of jumped in there.
Sure, this is pretty straightforward. Town needs to sign on an application for Mass Department of Agricultural Resources. This is for a monitoring inspection report, 2 years at the Nagog Orchard. So this is just application form that is looking for town to sign as the landowner.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board on this?
What does this program do specifically? What are they monitoring, and what's the outcome of the monitoring? Do you know?
My understanding is it's a requirement of the Agricultural Preservation Restriction Program, so that there's preservation restriction on the property, and associated with that is that they have to be periodically monitored. The exact what is being.
Agricultural use, basically.
I'm sorry, what, Paul?
They have to periodically make sure that the property is still under agricultural
Okay.
use.
Could not have said it better.
Okay, that's fine. I just didn't know what it was.
Me neither.
Cool.
All right, great. Any further discussion? We have a motion, please?
Okay, I move that the select board vote to authorize the town administrator to sign the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources APR approval 2020 federal monitoring inspection report for year 2 on-site monitoring.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye. The motion is approved as written, and we are on now to item 10D, E, Mr. Layden.
So on this one, and of course I got out of my PowerPoint. Before you is a request submitted by EHS for a gift acceptance in the amount of $2,500, and this would go into the TRED account. So the board is being asked to accept this donation.
Great. It's pretty straightforward. Any questions or comments from the board?
The only comment I'll make is, it's funny, this is related directly to the previous item, because John and Eunice Morrison were the owners of the orchard, and we purchased the orchard from, Eunice was still alive then, both of them are long gone, but I'll tell you, annually, a number of town departments and charities continue to benefit from their foundation, and we've probably gotten back all the money we paid them
Yeah,
over time.
it's true.
Contributions.
That's great.
It is great.
I'll move that the board vote to accept the $2,500 TRED donation from the John C. and Eunice B. Morrison Charitable Foundation.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye, and the motion is approved as written. And now we are on to item 10F. I don't know. You want me to take this, Joe, or if you want to speak to it?
That would be great if you could.
Okay, sure. So there, we have an application to use Littleton Common. Was approved at our last board meeting for the, an organization to commemorate India Day. The 74th India's Independence Day is next weekend. So we did approve that application, and they have come back. They wanted to just change the time of the event to begin the formal ceremony at 10:30 p.m. I think originally it was at 9:30 in the morning. I didn't anticipate that there would be any problem with that. And they also have provided a proclamation that they were asking the board if we would prepare and sign. So I didn't know how the board had any thoughts about creating a proclamation for this event.
Hasn't happened in a while, we've, done these things periodically over the years. Can't remember the last one, I think we had, for a while, they were flying the UN flag on the small common, and we would occasionally get requests to honor United Nations Day, I remember that. Mark probably remembers things before my time.
Right.
I'd be, I don't know, I'm not sure I'm gonna be around Saturday, otherwise I'd volunteer to represent the board there, but I don't have any problems with what they were asking for.
Okay. Yeah, unfortunately, I can't attend the event. I'm hosting a birthday party, so at my home, I don't know if any other members of the board are available.
I'm looking at my calendar right now.
Steph and Steve are moving out of my house that day to a new
Oh,
house.
they are?
So I'll be helping them
Oh,
move.
my gosh.
Well, I'm free, so it looks like it's me.
Okay. All right, so Matthew can attend.
And I'll get in touch with the organizers and talk to them.
Okay, perfect.
I'm in favor of a proclamation too. I think it's, yes.
Yeah, I just read through it, it's fine.
Let's encourage diversity in Littleton by all means.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great. So we can, Mr. Layton, if you could have this proclamation created on our town letterhead, that would be wonderful.
Sure.
And I think that was all they were asking for from us.
Oh, I think there was something about putting, just
Temporary
putting
flag.
spikes into the ground. and
Yeah,
Whether that was okay.
Right, so we were gonna, I believe, call dig safe, just because there's so many underground utilities on the common.
Or at least run it by Tim, Chris Stoddard, rather, and see if he knows offhand, they might already have that thing dig safe.
Chris suggested we call dig safe.
Yeah,
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
so that's already happened, all right.
yeah, so we'll see. I don't know if somebody's already done that, so we can follow up on
Okay.
that. All right, great, so do we need,
We might want to make a motion just to, formalize the proclamation part of it anyways, we've already approved the event, right?
okay,
Okay, then I'll make a motion that the, Board of Selectmen, vote to, proclaim, August 15th, as a commemoration of the 74th, anniversary of India's independence, and to, set forth a documentation of proclamation thereof.
I second.
motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
All right.
And Cindy Napoli is aye. I'm just looking at this, so on their proclamation, it says the 73rd anniversary.
Oh, that's a sample proclamation. I
Oh,
don't think
okay, so-
that's not the language they
It's not the-
necessarily
All
wanted
right,
us to use,
perfect.
but.
All right, good.
I went off of what was in the packet.
All right, perfect. All right, good. And now we are on to 10G. Mr. Layden?
Yes, and also, at the end of the meeting, I'm gonna have to run up quickly so that I can at least get wet signatures from the three of you, and then I'll shuttle it around to Paul, and Chuck. We have the, warrant for the state primary, that, needs to be signed by the select board.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, great.
Is there a
And
motion
I'll
to?
move that the select board vote to sign the Commonwealth of Massachusetts state primary warrant.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye. The motion is approved as written. And now we are on to item 10H. I talked to Selectman DeCoste earlier today. He asked that we not act on this evening.
Fair enough.
And now we are on to minutes.
Yeah, we do have minutes from the meeting of the 27th. I reviewed them, they look good to me. I don't know if other folks have had a chance to.
Yeah, they looked fine to me.
Yeah, I have no changes to them. They were all accurate as far as I could tell.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Thank you again to Sue Raymond.
Yes.
We
Excellent
talk a
work.
lot, don't we? I mean, less than
He's
when
like,
Chase
"Yes,
was
you
here,
do."
but still a lot.
All right, I will move that the board vote to approve the regular session meeting minutes of July 27th, 2020.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Aye.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye. And the minutes are approved as written. And now that concludes our meeting.
Under budget ahead of schedule, Madam Chair.
I'm 2 for 2. Excellent. So do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor, Mr. Knox?
Aye.
Mr. Nordhaus?
Yes.
Mr. Glavy?
Aye.
And Cindy Napoli is aye, and that concludes the Select Board meeting for Monday, August 10th. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful night.
Bye, everybody.
Good night, be safe.
Thank you all.